don't know how you met me, you don't know why you can't turn around and say goodbye. All you know is when I'm with you, I make you free and swim through your veins like a fish in the sea. I'm singing, follow me and everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. I'm not worried about the ring you wear, 'cause as long as no one knows, then nobody can care. You're feeling guilty, and I'm well aware, but you don't look ashamed, and baby, I'm not scared. I'm singing, follow me, and everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. Won't give you money, I can't give you the sky. You're better off if you don't ask why. I'm not the reason that you would go astray. We'll be alright if you don't ask me to stay. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. Don't know how you met me, you don't know why you can't turn around and say goodbye. All you know is when I'm with you, I make you free and swim through your veins like a fish in the sea. I'm singing, follow me, and everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. Follow me and everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. Everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. Wanna leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. I don't blame you, we got carried away. I can hold on to an empty space. You've found a new star to orbit. It could be love, I think you're too soon to call us off. When and where did we go cold? I thought I had you on hold, and every time I let you leave, I always saw you coming back to me. When and where did we go cold? I thought I had you on hold. Just to believe we were destined. Young hearts all need love, call it a lesson. The stars and the charts and the cards make sense only when we want them to. When I lie awake staring into space, I see a different view. Now you've found a new star to orbit. It could be love, I think you're too soon to call us soft. When and where did we go cold? I thought I had you on hold, and every time I let you leave, I always saw you coming back to me. When and where did we go cold? I thought I had you on hold, thought I had you on hold, I thought I had you on hold. I've been wondering if you remember, said that we're not made for each other. Cause I don't believe in soulmates, I wouldn't let it get in the way. I don't mean to complicate it, but there's no other way around it. To try to make one out of two, when I'm me and you are you, what am I supposed to do? When I fall for you, I'll change my colors if I have to. If anyone is worth it, I think it's you. Baby, I'd die for you. When I fall for you, we'll dance like the leaves when the time is due. Forgive and forget to make room for new. Baby, I'd die for you. When I fall for you, for you. When I fall for you, for you. Yorima yogin ga siganu, nalan ma zimba me and you. Namizi mina imahinga ine, Google imagining you diye. Kaima nanin bari. Yarsangin shamsim chiane, bahirin de gasini anahasa. Nana no ratu tutara isa. When I fall for you, I change my colors if I have to. If anyone is worth it, I think it's you. Baby, I'd die for you. When I fall for you, we'll dance like the leaves when the time is due. Forgive and forget to make room for new. Baby, I'd die for you. When I fall for you, for you. When I fall for you. Da 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 for you. Ba da 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 da. Ba da 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 da. Mi amor, ven esta noche. I bet you traveled far to come, my precious star so far. Precious star so far. I try. Llevo puesto tu short, cerca del phone. I'm throwing all my patience to forget and not to fall. Asking to the moon, way up here in front. Tired to be strong. You better call pensar tanto tiempo. Sins that I wonder I can't forget. Cancela del show, do it por favor. I bet you coming home. And now I thought, nola, toda la noche sola. Pero papé, caiga en el radio en miel. Quiero la nivel, ya te la libera en él. Sentar la carne con miel. Caiga en el radio en miel. Mi amor, ven esta noche. Precious stars so far. Precious stars so far. I try. Precious stars so far. ¿Por qué estás tan de lejos? No ves que no me relajo. Por causa del aire no de lejos, pero yo no me rebajo. No ves que no me relajo, pero no yo no me rebajo. Pero no yo ni me rebajo, pero no yo me rebajo, pero yo no me rebajo, pero yo no me rebajo. Pero yo no me rebajo. Mi amor, ven esta noche. Precious star so far. My precious star so far. I try. I try. Fucking rhythm on that song is so fucking hard. It's not even the Spanish is actually pretty easy on that song. The rhythm is hard because it's actually kind of like in the middle of the song it becomes like a rap song. But anyway, I'm not a rapper, as you guys know. Shout out to those who get the reference. Alrighty, let's transition to me. Okay, so everything's gonna be off because it's been a minute since I've streamed. And I'm also half asleep, and I can also hear people banging the doors outside. So it's a normal day. I just joke about that because some people slam the door harder than me, and I'm just saying, probably shouldn't happen. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I am NS, Nerd, Justin, Jay, that mother trucker who killed me, that pussy archer, the guy who keeps running me over in Halo, whichever you'd like to call me. If it looks like it's dark in here, it is, and honestly, I don't think I'm gonna fix the lighting, which is not very e-boy of me, but that's where I'm at. Alright, so let's say hello to everybody who said hello to me. Hello to Des, how's it going? Magister. Those two are almost always like tied for first or second. Death of a Game Shatterline, I don't know much about it. You want to tell me some about it? Been a while. Excuse me. I ate a protein bar right before this, my bad. I usually fast, if you guys remember. Been a while since I caught a stream. Super hot nerds. Yeah, there you go. Chris got the reference. Let's go, man. Like, it's funny whenever you're a kid, knowing memes, like, oh, sorry. Take that back. When I was a kid, knowing memes was like the secret lingo that nobody understood. To put this into context, memes only existed in like hyperbolic time chambers. And what I mean by that is that like you laugh, you lose was very popular on the internet. There's also image threads and other types of threads like that, but YLYL is probably the most popular. And I'm saying this as somebody who's been on forums for 20 years. My Sherdog account, for example, is like 15 years old or something like absurd. But anyway, I've been on forums for a long time, and back then, like, memes were very contained. And it sounds hilarious to put it in that context, but like, kind of what I'm saying is like, if you knew about memes, you only knew about them from visiting these image threads, which were not super common back then. So they were like very, like counterculture, hidden culture kind of shit, And I think most of the people in chat who experienced this can agree. When it did start becoming mainstream, I think it kind of surprised all of us memers, the original memers, because we never saw memeing as a serious thing, like, meaning that we never thought it would become culture, right? Like, we just thought it was something dumb that people did on, like, YouTube poops were very popular back then. Yeah, no, Newgrounds, all your bases belong to us, there is no spoon. I mean, I have a good one from Funny Junk, which was like an X-rated version of Newgrounds. This is how stupid I was as a kid, okay? And I still have the same sense of humor. So before people think, wow, you're immature, it's like, my immaturity didn't change in terms of my humor. But my favorite meme as a kid was this meme where this guy goes, oh my god, my parents are dead. And this guy next to him goes, yeah, apparently. And it just like, it's like one of those drawn, like, animated ones. It just like, it keeps panning to the guy, and he goes, you get it? Like apparently, because someone killed your parents, and like, and he like starts explaining the joke, and the other guy obviously like murders him or or whatever. But they made a bunch of versions of that same meme. And one of the funny versions of that meme, again, this is my sense of humor, is it extends after that. He leaves the house, he goes to a shop. And this became an inside joke that me and my friends would always say to each other, not do, like pranks with the buds. But we would be like, so he goes up to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper's like, man, you need to get in line and listen to me. And he's like, oh, okay, Bob. And he goes, man, suck my dick. And the guy looks at him, and he goes, okay. And he starts doing it. And they showed the animations, and obviously as a kid, this was fucking hilarious. But it was always just a funny meme to us, because it was just like, first off, who the fuck thinks of that shit? And second off, it was just like before Suddenly Gay became like a super popular meme these days, that was like Suddenly Gay back then, to put it into modern terms. If you're not familiar with Suddenly Gay, I'm not going to explain it because it's a meme and memes aren't meant to be explained. What's up, Mr. Mirror? I mean, there is a website that explains mirrors, or mirrors? Memes? I said, it's because I said Mr. Mirror. Al-Hilal or Al-Nasir? That's such a random ass question. You can hear my pronunciation, I've been working on it. Liquid Generation, Angry Leprechaun. It's incredible how Newgrounds is still around, yeah, honestly. Admitting of being gay requires more courage than being a man. I guess you could say that. That's one way to take the meme. There's a lot of virtual world news, and I kind of just figured let's do some like big roundup of it. That feels like it'll be fun. Alrighty, so what do we got? Starting off with, not that. Okay, so there was a thread by Mysonics. This is actually a poster on this subreddit who is pretty like relatively reputable. I've seen their post a few times. Shout out to Mysonics if you're in chat. And they basically reviewed Throne and Liberty after playing the Korean launch. For those that listened in the very beginning, that was me singing a song in Korean, or attempting to. The hardest part of that song is the second part because the tempo changes. And anytime you're not used to, or even closely native to a language, rhythm and tempo are the parts that you're going to struggle with the most. That's the parts that make you feel and seem conversational and seem like you can like flow with your words. Like those parts are really hard when you start messing with that. It's why like sometimes when people speak, like it's different, but Korean and Japanese are different. Korean's way more fluid. But with Japanese, it's why sometimes people sound very robotic when they speak it. It's because they haven't learned like the kind of like greasing the gears part. I mean, I guess the same thing could be said in Korean because technically speaking, a lot of Eastern languages, including Korean especially, has what you call like, I don't know the correct term in Korean, sorry, but they're like filler words is what they say in English. Kind of like, yeah, right. Like things like that where it's like you're not really like adding anything to the conversation, but you're kind of just like, I see what you mean. No, I know what you're saying. Like it's kind of like saying things like that. Because Korean language is so efficient. We're ranting in Korean already, or about Koreans already. Because the language is so efficient in Korean, the vowels are very similar to Spanish and Portuguese and other languages, by the way, like that, Romance languages, ironically. But the languages function very differently, which is that they're fairly more to the point, which means that when people speak them, they can kind of sound very like short. So what people do is they increase the amount of lingo spoken and they introduce filler words. And again, I don't know if this applies to Japanese nearly as much. I don't think it does. And I don't know shit about Chinese, nor like Taiwanese, nor like Thai, rather, because I don't actually know if they speak a different language. Let's see. Don't know. Yeah, I don't, honestly, any of the other Asian languages, I wouldn't know. Like shit. But anyway, so this guy reviewed the game, and his big bullet points that he thinks are going to be the most like polarizing are that the game is very grindy. This should not be surprising to anybody. That being said, I don't want to make just like this blanket response regarding grind in Korea because it's understood and enjoyed in that market in a way that maybe Westerners don't necessarily understand. But part of that process is as well is that when the games are brought to different regions, oftentimes they're not really localized properly. So if this game is literally treated the same as it's treated in Korea, like Ion was initially, it's probably not going to be very favorably viewed. Now, grind is an interesting concept. If you really like the gameplay and enjoy the game, you won't really see it as grind even if it is blatantly grind in many cases. That being said, Throne and Liberty doesn't seem to necessarily be firing on all cylinders like there, like in such a way that like could overcome that gap, which means that if the grind is too insurmountable for some players in the West, it probably will serve as a boundary. And maybe that's just always going to be a boundary to a certain extent. And I don't think you should always just completely get rid of certain boundaries just because players that would otherwise essentially never play the game would suddenly make them maybe play the game. That's just not a helpful proposition when you're trying to sell to an audience that you know exists. Audience that like to grind. They mentioned that the PvP, the mass PvP, is very lineage based. If you're familiar with Lineage, Lineage has very big, massive clan versus clan battles. Over keeps, over sieges, over certain zones. And that's kind of the run of the mill in Korea. A common misconception is that the grind in Korea leads to in-game PvE. And probably 80% of cases, and again, I'm just gonna say this in case this needs to be said, I don't think any other content creator or any other person that covers MMOs or virtual worlds besides Steparu knows more about Korean MMOs or the Korean market than I do. Like literally, I just don't think that they do. Sorry. And that's not even like saying that they necessarily have to or whatever else, but I've put an absurd amount of time into studying the Korean market. I literally am learning Korean. I plan on traveling to Korea to then complete my Mecca. But needless to say, it's always been important for me to be plugged into Korean culture because I like it, but because it also dictates the virtual world space, especially these days. And a common misconception about it is that people, because they're Westerners, they always apply their own lens and think, oh, well, Lineage is popular because it's just grindy and people PvE. Not true. They PvE so they can PvP. In fact, that's nearly every single Korean MMO, or MMORPG if you want to call them that too. They almost all function that way. In-game PvE doesn't really exist as a concept in these markets in the same way that it does in the West, which means that they respond differently to this type of thing. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't like it, right? Something Asmongold said when reviewing my video is that he thinks that if games are good regardless, it won't matter about localization or the markets that they come from. And the sad truth is that that's just not the case, because markets aren't sometimes aware of a particular kind of game, a genre, or a game style. And so if they get painfully introduced to it, instead of kind of like with kitty, gloves and stuff, it's going to turn them off a lot of the time. Ion was a perfect example of that. Many people I know loved the game, hated the grind. That means that they could have fixed something there. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not just like throw out the bathwater. Oh no, okay, well it's grindy. Okay, well, it's fucked. Like, don't fix the grind levels. No, like so many players I know and knew liked Ion and would have kept playing it if they found a way to fix that. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, that's why people like me care so much about localization. It's not just so I can be like, keep all the markets unique, like some, I don't know, some like anti-globalist or something. It's like, no, it's because the markets are unique and the players function differently in them. Let me catch up on chat. North Korea. You're Portuguese? That's cool. No eu falo português. No eu falo português. But I respect it. I sure hope literally any of these news are good. I hope so. Yeah, I hope you guys are gonna like all of the news that I have coming, because I have a lot more stuff to talk about too. I'm just trying to catch up on the chats right now, because I still only have one monitor, but don't worry guys. I'm going to be purchasing a monitor. Maybe I might even purchase one soon. In the next 2 weeks or so when I get my check. Would be a good time, honestly. Yeah, sorry, Rafael. Rafael Hoban. I can at least pronounce your name. But I love Portuguese, the language. I think it's very interesting and expressive. And then for those that don't know this about me, since I'm Sephardic, like Jewish, it means I'm also Portuguese distantly. So. Oh damn. So you're not a Rafael Hoban. I just love the way Brazilians pronounce Hob. It's awesome. Hob. My coach is Brazilian, by the way, my main coach. in jiu-jitsu, and his name so my coach here in Mexico told me a funny joke. She says he has 3 names. It's either Robert Drysdale, like in Spanish, or it's Robert Drysdale, right, in English, or in Portuguese it's Robert Drysdale. No, Drysdale. There you go. It's like he has like, and it's funny because he's mixed, like I am, like mixed race. So he probably gets even more shit because of it. Like people are calling him like 3 different names. That's a pretty big example, though. So something that I saw that I wanted to respond to that's actually not MMO related news, but I just thought that I would like talk about it. So Smite 2 is supposed to be coming out relatively soon, and I was reading some of the discourse about it, and it was like confusing the fuck out of me. Like some people were saying, you can tell when people just have no fucking clue about game development, and some people were saying, oh well, you know, I hope they let you keep your masteries and from Smite 1 and they carry over to Smite 2. What? Why would they? Why would they let you do that? It's a different game. No, dude, it's the same game, bro. It's just in a completely different engine that's 6 versions ahead, utilizing completely new technology that's built into the engine. It functions way more smoothly, has higher fucking server like latency or lower latency, but it's just the same game, bro. It's the same game. It's like, it's not the same game. It's an Unreal 5. Smite 2 is an Unreal 5. Even if I fucking shit on high-res all the time in my videos, you guys should know that I'm one of the biggest like shit talkers and biggest like fans. I'm both. But I'm just like, it's Smite 2, like it's Unreal 5. Like, do you understand that the old game is made in Unreal 3? Does anybody know that? I was telling my cousin that this week, and even he was shocked. I was like, I've been complaining about Smite's engine for 10 years. And the fact that people don't know, I'm gonna start screaming it above the rooftops, that the game is using a 15-plus-year-old engine. And whenever I would complain about it not being a good engine and the gameplay being shit, people would kind of be like, oh, well, you know, like they thought I was splitting hairs. No, literally, it's using Unreal 3 and it sucked. Compare that to fucking Gigantic or Smite 2. Look at the new gameplay. It doesn't even look like the same fucking planet. So that, anyway, that was just like some random thing I had to respond to. It's just like some players think remasters and remakes and like sequels are way easier than they actually are. Just because it could be the exact same design, if they're using completely new physics 6 versions ahead, essentially, how is it even fucking close to the same? It's not, just by basis of the engine. Literally. Like, even if it was the exact same thing, it still wouldn't be the same. Like, that's not how engineering works. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if I'm building a new, here, I used to work in construction, project management. Most people know this, it's very boring, blah, 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 blah. I'll give you a construction management fucking example. I could build the same fucking building, but if I'm building a corrugated deck versus building a fluted deck, or versus building a flat concrete deck, or versus building, you know, gypsum concrete into ceiling, like, you know, type of assembly, they might have the same exact building specifications in terms of how many floors, where the core and shell goes, but guess what? They're not the same building. They're the literal, the engineering of the building is different, which means by literal chemical reactions, by science, by engineering, it's not the same, right? It might look the same, but it's not, it's literally not the same. That's the best example I can give because it's like, that's a literal engineering example. To be fair, minus Siski, you're probably right. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of Smite 1, if I'm being honest. But I'm actually excited to see what they can do with the new Smite. It was just like, when I was seeing that as a major criticism, I'm just like, I mean, you guys think you're being smart because like sometimes when angry mobs get a bunch of upvotes on websites like Reddit and, you know, Twitter and YouTube, they think they're making some kind of point, but the majority of people who are upvoting you don't have the fucking gall to even voice their own opinion. So it's not really that useful for them to upvote you, because what are they really even vocalizing? The same idiocy? Because you're not actually saying anything of note. You're just basically showcasing how dumb you are. And you know, like, one thing that like cracks me up whenever I respond to certain comments that are just blatantly dumb comments. For example, there was this poster, Azure Rocks, who probably had been watching my videos for like a number of years. Recently in my gigantic video, this was a big narrative that came out around the video, so they weren't the only one pushing this, but it was just bizarre to me how much they were willing to stick to essentially delusion over just making a logical process and then making it about me being a meanie head, which is usually what people do whenever I start making fun of their really bad arguments. That's not actually an ad hominem to you, by the way. If I say your argument's shit, that's not an ad hominem. Does anybody actually know or understand that concept? If I say your argument's not good, did you know that that's not actually an ad hominem? I'm attacking your argument, which I'm allowed to do under the basis of debate, right? I'm not attacking. I'm not saying, if I say that you're an idiot, it's because you keep pushing the same argument without recollecting your position, without changing the way that you're approaching it, without addressing any of my points. I think that that literally is idiot behavior, because you're not demonstrating any ability to actually engage and learn and maneuver and change your perspective on things, which is pretty low IQ, if I'm going to be honest. Anyway, this Azure Rocks guy, for example, was talking about how, dude, like, this game's just gonna fail, Gigantic's just gonna fail because it's free to play, and it's like, okay, the game right now on Steam is not really doing that well, and I think there's other very serious reasons for that that are far bigger than fucking, oh no, it's $20 and they went for the Smite approach. Technically, they didn't go for the full Smite approach, which is another part of the problem, right? They kind of went for like a half-assed like Overwatch approach, which is just bizarre considering it failed for Overwatch 2. Why would they copy the same concepts? Anyway, another argument. The point that I'm making is that you can take issue with a game, you can have issue, and you can even make arguments why you think it's not going to do well or it didn't do well, right? The problem is that if your argument's based around completely not understanding the position or the argument that was being presented in the first place when the game got launched, then you're just going to look like an idiot, right? I'll give you a good example. So when Gigantic launched, people have this weird delusional idea that because the game looks good and plays well, what do you mean it couldn't monetize well? You're just saying that. No, the developers said that. I was told by sources at Motiga that they couldn't monetize the game. That they didn't even know how to fucking monetize the game. Like, my source, I remember talking to a former developer even telling me, like, we were 2 years in, people have been playing the game already. We don't even know how to make money. No, dude, it's because, nerd, you don't understand. If the game was free to play, like, so it just makes sense. If it's free to play, then it just works. It's like, that's not an argument. Because more people can play it doesn't actually mean that it can be a good product, nor make good money. It doesn't mean that. Why is Smite even still around? The game's not free to play. It has a Founders Pack, and it works. And guess what they're doing with Smite 2? A Founders Pack, and guess what? It's gonna work. People acting like there's like a one-size-fits-all. Han was payable for a long time and had a big audience. Why are people just acting like it's one-size-fucking-fits-all based on their common sense, like, weird delusion? It's like, what are you basing this on? Base it in actual reality and address the points that are being presented. If your argument is, well, I think if Gigantic goes free to play, then more people can play it. Guess what? I can't debate that. But I don't have to, because the game didn't make enough money the first time around, which means it doesn't matter if more players play it if it doesn't make more money. It's about making money. It's a business. That's how you can tell some of these players are so self-focused, they don't even think about the business aspects. And then when I point this out, this poster gets so fucking, like, butthurt about it. They start saying, oh, you're being a meanie head and all this kind of, it's like, how have you been here for so long on my channel And any slight pushback you get when you make a dog shit argument, by the way, because the argument should never be, well, why don't they do a thing that makes them not enough money for reasons that I just want them to? It's like, dude, that they're not gonna do that. What do you mean they can't make money, nerd? The art team put insane amount of detail into the character models and made them look really good. Guess what they didn't put detail into? Making skins. You know how many games have teams that are like just as big as their art team just making skins? Fortnite and many other games, a lot of them, which meant that Gigantic never had a chance because as soon as it got popular, it couldn't make money. Do you guys understand that? It had a lot of players playing, but how can they pay for the servers? How can they promise Microsoft they're going to keep the lights on when they're not turning a profit after multiple years? And that's what I'm saying. It's like, people can shit on Smite, but Mr. Zero Sins is right. They knew how to monetize. Why are people shitting on this business plan if it literally worked for them? They've sold probably millions of copies. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, too much talk about Smite and other shit. Let's get back into Throne and Liberty. So it talks about you can buy premium currency and acquire gear from the auction house. That's pretty typical in Korea now. I wonder if that will hold whenever it comes to the West as well. TL says, or this guy says that TL doesn't really do anything to like reinvent the wheel, which I think is going to stunt some of its initial like attraction, but because the game does look really well, maybe that can kind of be offset. Westerners love pretty Eastern games, let's be honest. Okay, so he talks about some more of the good aspects here, like the class system being flexible, there being linear and forgiving gear progression, which I'm a big fan of, which is why you can't just shit on grinding, guys. It opens up that kind of aspect. It has some decent story, this guy's saying. Lineage style PvP, which I'm a big fan of. Skill matters, even though it's tab target. It's very polished, and it has a lot of potential for new updates. Now, what I wanted to talk about a little bit, and sorry, my voice is like leaving me today, guys. It says the game will be a massive hit among the player base that thoroughly enjoyed Lineage 2. Now, the problem with this, and he actually outlines this, is that Lineage 2 was not a massive hit in the East, or rather the West. It was only a massive hit in South America and Eastern Europe, through private servers primarily, so I don't know if that success means that it's going to translate that well. And then basically his other point is just his opinions about the current market. So yeah, this is actually pretty well done. I think this does give you a pretty fair view of the game. Nothing seems too glossy, which is pretty helpful. Speaking of glossy, I actually wanted to talk about something. Let me catch up on my comments real quick. Yeah, exactly, minus Siski. If it's free to play, yes, it means more people can play it. That doesn't, however, mean that it's gonna like generate more money magically. That like free to play games is like a fucking genius oxymoron. Because it doesn't actually exist, right? It's not free to play. They have to make a living. So the games are not free. However, they operate in certain ways that make money through, you know, tweaking certain levers, maybe having XP potions, maybe buying costumes, maybe having DLC packs, loot boxes. Yeah, so Smite is free to play, but they have a Founders Pack, and the Founders Pack are extremely popular. Like, whenever the game was first coming out, I mean, fuck, I think everyone I knew who played the game bought the Founders Pack. And that's like a very, like, you know, my anecdotes, but like, you know, just like to give you my perspective, like pretty much everyone I knew was buying the Founders Pack because it's such a good deal. You get all the champions for free. If League had something like that, I'd buy it too. If I was still playing it, I guess. The Founders Pack included gems, gods, and skins. See, that's a good point. It also included skins. 800% value. Yeah, a lot of value there. Gigantic is a scam. They said they won't develop the game further. It's only pay to play to scam the first couple thousand, then abandon the game. Well, like, do you understand what a scam means? Like, by definition? Let's look it up. Let's educate you. So scam means a dishonest scheme. If they told you they were gonna abandon it, if they said they weren't gonna make more content and they haven't promised more content, then that means they were honest, which literally counters the entire like point you made. Anyway. Oh, I see Mr. Zeroson said the same thing as me. I was like, am I the only one that just realized that this guy made literally no fucking sense? I already played Gigantic and Predecessor. I don't think I play Smite 2. I'm waiting for Marvel Rivals, though. Marvel Rivals looks like it'll be fun for a couple late nights, but I don't think it'll be serious in any way, shape, or form. And that's cool that you're playing both of those games, to be honest. I think I much prefer, like, Predecessor's engine and kind of approach to gameplay than Gigantic's. I just don't like the map and the game design of Gigantic, if I'm being honest. I like the art style, I like the combat. I don't like everything else. Alright, so another thing we're going to cover news-wise, and by the way, I saw a comment that I missed up there. I'm going to scroll back up there and get it, because it was like a long one that I didn't respond to. What kind of insights do you usually make from excessive in-game boost campaigns and live service or virtual world titles that would affect the in-game world economy? Example, greatly increasing the chance of drops. You usually make from excessive in-game boost campaigns and live service virtual world titles that would affect in-game. Like, are you trying to talk about, like, psychologically? Because I'm, you know, as you probably know, I'm interested in pretty much all of the aspects of virtual worlds. So I can answer this question a couple of different ways. I'll say that, like, part of what's so interesting to me is to see how much human nature can just, like, wildfire activate and just take hold. That's so interesting to me to just see in different worlds and different concepts and economies. Other things are how much players don't pay attention to the cogs that are being moved behind the economy. You realize there's a lot of analogies from that to the real world, because people also don't know how money works in the real world. So some things like that. And yeah, something else it's not fully based on what you're talking about, but I want to mention this because this was like huge for me growing up. So most people know here that I can recognize in chat are gonna know like my origin story. You know, I grew up very poor. My dad was from the projects, moved away from the border, and then we lived in Houston, in, you know, one of the worst neighborhoods in the town. Or in the city. It's more like a town in the city because it's such a big city. And so growing up, I didn't really understand economics that well, neither did my family, as you can imagine. And when I got into MMOs, they actually taught me a lot about economics, but the part that I wanted to talk about was that MMOs allow you to use your labor in the game or your skill in the game to translate into money. That's not always as clear-cut in the real world, because that requires you to have an opportunity in the real world, whereas the opportunities are kind of fed to you in video games, more kind of like, you know, hardly, I guess. So I think that that actually makes it much easier to learn the economy and the concept of the economy, ironically, in a virtual world than a real world. Because in a virtual world, you can just immediately start handling currency, start making mistakes, which you can learn from, start understanding concepts that exist in many of these virtual worlds that, you know, property rental, selling low, buying high, or buying low, selling high, undercutting people, many of these concepts that kind of exist or don't exist in our market for certain reasons because of laws or whatever else. Like, I really, and the same thing applies, my same perspective on that applies to social stuff. It's much easier to learn how to be social by playing a virtual world. So if I met somebody and I've given many you know, like when I say antisocial, I usually mean in the context of they think that they're antisocial. Humans aren't antisocial. If you are, there's something clinically wrong with you, and you will either hurt a bunch of people or yourself. Because humans aren't supposed to be antisocial. That being said, as you guys know, some are less social than others, which is not necessarily inherently wrong. Some of these people, like me growing up, that didn't have a lot of exposure to other kids, like socializing with them, I should say, you don't have the best like social skills, especially if you're smart or weird or whatever, insert thing. And so virtual worlds are actually like the best playground for this. Now the problem is that right now, the majority of them don't actually allow you to do this, which is why things like VR chat are so fucking popular and changing the world in terms of like the new generation. It's also why games like Second Life and what's the other one? It's Second Life, and then what's that other one that people like a lot? I can't remember, but one of those other simulation games. These kinds of games aren't nearly as popular as they used to be, but like with the revitalization of like VR and VR revitalizing social stuff online, VR chat is effectively what this is, what I'm describing. VR chat is like a place you can go socialize, practice your social skills, and kind of get to know people. Mind you, there's some virtual worlds you can do this in, but the majority of them aren't very good for it. For example, if you play games like Final Fantasy XIV, or games like ESO, you will never actually be directed to talk to other players in those games. The only time you ever have to interact with them, period, is if you're doing group story content. Now here's the catch. The group story content is auto-selected, which means you still don't have to talk to any of them. And this was always something that meant a lot to me to prove as a concept. So when I got to Heaven's Sword in Final Fantasy XIV, and when I got to level 50 on my Imperial Agent in SWTOR, I never talked to any players at all, ever. I never typed in chat, never said a single word to anybody, never accepted any friend requests, never, not that I got any, but I'm just saying like I never interacted with anybody. So these games really allow players that don't have much social skills to feel comfortable. And I understand that, because you want to feel comfortable. The problem is that it does fuck all to actually help you evolve your social skills, which are literally your most important human skills that you can have. With the age of AI, the age of automation, like, your social skills are the only thing that sets you apart. And so, like, you can tell this is like a soapbox thing for me. I should pull out my little soapbox image that I have. But it means a lot to me because if we don't give people places to socialize with kid gloves safely, they're going to be a lot more prone to make mistakes. And the sad thing is, and this is just true for the recent 5 major fucking killing, shooting, crazy people stories, since you guys watch my content, I hope you really know that I actually like the detective part of that stuff. It's not just some weird cringe thing that people think I just tack on. I've been reading detective books since I was maybe like 8 years old. I've probably read over 150 of them. If you count books on tape, I literally cannot even tell you how many books of those I've read. So I'm pretty obsessed with. I've watched nearly every episode of Detective Conan. I'm on episode like 1010. Needless to say, detective shit's my beat. So when I got a career in cost estimation, it was kind of ironic because cost estimation is basically being like a cost detective. The cool thing about cost estimation though versus being a detective is in cost estimation, you give people like ranges of how much something's going to cost versus like when you're an actual detective, if you get the actual person wrong, you're like, fuck, the wrong guy went to jail. You know what I'm saying? So it's like way less stakes being a cost detective. Anyway, the point that I'm kind of making is like, you have to have a certain level of curiosity to want to dig deeper into some of these concepts because they sometimes don't always like reveal themselves in the most obvious ways. And a big part of that is like socialization. So people might be saying, well, in Final Fantasy XIV, how would you change the situation to where you would learn how to socialize better? There's actually a lot of easy ways. For example, they could add, in fact, one of the guilds in the game exists that allows you to kind of do these quests that basically teach you how to play the game. And they allow you to join a chat where players can actually teach you aspects of that. Literally encourage players to ask questions. This is not strange for game design, guys. Telling your audience, hey, ask questions if you don't know something. Or talk to this NPC guard and maybe he'll tell you something. Teaching players, even if it is with NPCs, how to socialize is literally, it starts from the very like first thing you press go on the game. The first loading screen could tell you something about socialization. That loading screen could say, when you talk to other players, they're more likely to give you buffs. When you greet other players, they're more likely to give you buffs. You see what I'm saying? So like these types of like socialization aspects have to actually be included in the game. Guess what is another part of that? Having an existential threat that you have to actually combat against. Which means that everything being instanced is actually not the best formula for making friends. It isn't. How could it be? If everything is literally disconnected, look, here are the instances in an open world format, here are them disconnecting. How can you socialize in the same way when all of these quadrants are separate from each other? You can't. Maybe you're hyper-focused on socializing in those groups, but here's the problem. Most of the time you're doing that, these are LFR, LFG groups, which means you're not socializing with them. In fact, in most cases, you don't even want to. You see the problem? So it makes these games rely heavily on guilds and Discord, which makes a lot of players feel like that's the only thing that matters when it comes to socialization. But if that's the case, then why does VR chat exist? Think about that for a second. Why does VR chat even exist? If Discord exists, it's like the #1 counter everyone seems to always tell me whenever I mention social MMOs and virtual worlds. Well, you know, why even do that? You have Discord. Why does VR chat exist? Because it's virtual reality. I mean, come on, guys. We haven't solved what's the most fun, best way to socialize with each other in a way that simulates a real world in a fucking chat service, Discord. It's not gonna ever replace a world. It's just an app. If people are not socializing in your world itself, guess what that means? You're not facilitating it. Which means you probably don't care. So when people feel like that with ESO and games like Final Fantasy XIV and SWTOR, they're not trying to make you socialize that much in those games. It's not really a focus of them. They don't need you to. So yeah, it might feel like in those games you can get away with just being in Discord and never talking to anybody. But try doing that in fucking Asheron's Call. Try doing that in Dark Age of Camelot. Try doing that in Project 1999. You get the idea. Anyway, that's probably like my most like, if you're wondering what's my biggest like social justice like, you know, thing to fight for, my virtue, it actually is socialization. That's why I cry about it so much. But I don't cry about it because I want these worlds that don't function like that to just magically start to function like that or change all their inner wiring so they can. No, I just want more representation for things like that to exist in the market space, so players can actually learn and get better engagement in that. And one of my best examples of this is Minecraft was never seen as anything close to virtual world. And now look at it. Some Minecraft servers have more players than MMOs do. So Minecraft is one of the most popular games ever. Biggest grossing games ever. They have a literal fucking MMO version of the game coming out. Like, there are hardcore PvP Minecraft servers. There's One Life full survival servers of Minecraft. Do you see what I'm saying? Which means that, like, when MMOs kind of died out, everyone thought it was because of the hardcore shit. Then Minecraft came around and was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? I'm 9 years old and I just beat hardcore mode. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what I love about Minecraft, is it really spit in the face of a lot of those people that were just spreading this like weird nonsense of like, well, it's because people don't like challenges anymore. Then why the fuck are they playing Elden Ring? Then why the fuck are they playing Dark Souls? And complaining that they wish there was easy modes. Clearly, people still like to play hard things. It just became this weird like narrative because hard difficulties got so popular in virtual worlds that people felt like that replaces a hard world. And I'm here to tell you guys, if you rely on harder content only at the end of the lever, a fraction of your player base will only ever be the ones to complete it. Here's why. Look at my hands. Skill ceiling. Here. Skill floor. If the player base has to keep climbing up to get to the hardest content, a fraction of them will only ever be able to do that because it requires you to self-improve. The game's not improving you enough. You have to self-improve. You have to find like-minded players who are same skill level at a certain level, right? That you can perform at. These are big deciding factors in how high you can climb up that ladder to the mythic content, to the savage content, right? So when you use those as the barometers, unless you're the Japanese market playing Final Fantasy XIV, who apparently fucking has an insanely high clear rate of hard content, the majority of your player base is going to be so bad, they'll never even get fucking close to getting to that point. Which means that you're essentially developing a lot more content. And you're doing a lot more work. I'm not saying that you can't make more money doing that. You probably will, in some ways. The problem that I'm espousing is that Final Fantasy XIV's #1 problem was just talked about recently. The literal developer of the game admitted the same thing I've been complaining about for ages. That the same player base that even talks to me about Final Fantasy XIV has been complaining about. That the player base is arguably one of the worst they've ever seen in any MMO or MMORPG. And that sounds like I'm just being like, it's like, no, but like I have multiple accounts of this, of people being shocked at how bad the players are. I was shocked at how bad the players are. That's not me trying to gatekeep. It's like, yeah, I gatekeep on some things, but I don't really gatekeep on if players are bad or good. The problem is if you're that bad at level 50 in Heavensward and Stormblood on the last leg of the content, you're not learning anything. And guess what? The game doesn't teach you shit. And that's the problem, is Final Fantasy XIV's leveling experience is so trivial, it doesn't teach you anything at all. It's such a horrible tutorial. You are not prepared for the higher levels of content from playing that. You're just not. I'm telling you that as a guy who's been playing these kinds of games for over 20 years. And all levels of range, you know, hardcore, professional, you name it. You're like the likeliness of you getting good enough off of that kind of leveling experience that's so trivial, it's just not gonna happen. And that's because proper leveling systems that actually can increase your skill level have to increasingly raise the risk, right? That's how they almost all work, progression systems. Because as the risk increases, you get new tools to overcome that risk, which makes you feel accomplished, which makes you feel badass like a hero, but also makes you feel like you had to overcome something, right? I talk about this endlessly with games like Guild Wars 2, how they trivialize their dungeons and early game content so much that the player base fucking can't even do the end game content. And SWTOR, the player base that was the most casual was complaining that they couldn't beat the storylines by themselves because they were under-leveled. I'm not even fucking kidding. Or they didn't want to bring the right companion with them, meaning they didn't want a power game in a fucking virtual world. And so they complained so much that right before the launch of SWTOR, BioWare fucking panicked and literally trivialized all of the content. I'm talking literally made it anyone here in chat can back me up on this, as someone who played 9 months since the alpha before the game launched, by the way, so I played it a lot before it ever came out. That version of the game in alpha, closed beta, and even open beta was fucking awesome because it was challenging and it felt like I was playing KOTOR, a challenging RPG that I had to overcome things. Their genius solution? Trivialize all of that. Guess what the number one fucking thing happened immediately? Everybody beat the game in record time, and BioWare held their hands up like this. Oh fuck. I know, because I knew people on the team that they were shocked that people like me got to max level in 3 days. When I played SWTOR at launch, it's my biggest, besides the amount of full days I spent playing StarCraft as a kid, I literally would play StarCraft for a full day sometimes. I have at least 3 full days of StarCraft. My record, though, is in SWTOR. In SWTOR, I played 36 hours straight. I was level 42 already. My friend got level 50 faster than I did. So meaning that this is the level of try-hard player you're dealing with. You're dealing with no-life losers like me who will drink a bunch of fucking Red Bull and fucking coffee until they literally see shit. I was seeing shit. That's how much I was fucking plugged into this shit. When I tell you guys that I'm a no-lifer, I earned my stripes. I lost my brain cells. But anyway, the game was so fucking easy by comparison. Now, we just fucking breezed through it. The entire point of the game was to do the storylines, and they made the content easy. Think about how dumb you have to be to not think that through. But now, developers have realized there's actually some genius to that. Maybe you have to spend a lot of money, but you can just make the leveling and story experiences so easy that they're basically appealing to anybody, even people who wouldn't play such a game like that has a challenge or whatever else. So in a sense, they've become like these weird graphical novels where players can essentially have zero skill and still make it through a game like Final Fantasy XIV or SWTOR or ESO. And if it sounds like, people love to always poke on, oh, it sounds like you're just shitting on bad players. I literally teach players how to play. And I've been doing that on YouTube before this channel. My old channel was literally an MMO guide channel. So needless to say, I like to teach players. But guess what? You can't teach a player base that's literally allergic to the idea of having to learn. So much so that Final Fantasy XIV with the Thief, but they completely changed the rotation of it because they don't want to have to press a couple more buttons. You guys that wonder, why do I take issue with the lower skilled players? It's because they will always lower the ceiling. They will always lower the ceiling, or the floor at the very least. They will always do that. Literally, they're designed to. The problem then becomes, how low do you lower it versus how high do you raise it? And that's a balance. How many can you maintain that player base? Halo 2, for example, although a very successful Halo game, was a little bit more on the other end. It was a little too hardcore. So Halo 3 has almost always been more popular, more positively received, more positively talked about, so on and so forth, because Halo 3 went back into the other direction a little bit and made the matchmaking a little bit more casual, made the gameplay a little bit more casual, right? And so ultimately, they were able to garner way more players. Now here's the funny thing. What happened after Halo 3? The worst Halo arguably ever. And it's because they changed the literal core aspects that Halo 3 just discovered were so magical. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, man, the shit can be complicated when it comes to design, and things change and move, especially as you're coming out with new games. But let me catch up in chat. I'm so marveled out. I'm also salty that DC can't get their shit together. Fair enough. Dude, I encountered that Mr. Mirror, and I'm not gonna lie, it made me log off the game. So Mr. Mirror talked about an issue that Gigantic is having right now. We had this guy quit in my fucking game, and someone was playing Tyr, the Rose guy, like, and I just, like, my cousin says, dude, what is that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're like looking around on the map. I'm playing the little bow guy, and it was like this fucking invulnerable bot who kept chasing me around, but he, like, I don't think he could damage me. It was just, it was a really bad bug, man. So yeah, people want to talk about the business model being the problem with Gigantic at the moment. Honestly, they're having so many other issues. It's not even the biggest problem. Yeah, but Coco Coconuts, that's just kind of how the industry works because it's based on human psychology, right? Like, for example, what Rift used to do back in the day is they would allow the old raid set to be on the shop, so people could buy the old raid set, and the only place you could buy, or the only place you could get besides from a drop, the neck pieces was from the shop too. So there's sometimes little like tricks like that that developers can employ that basically like shoehorn people into doing that more often. But we're just talking about levers of monetization. These are always going to be based on things like scarcity, FOMO, fear of missing out, and helping players feel like epic because they want to feel and look epic. They kill themselves because you just got too much free stuff. Then they tried to correct it and people went apeshit. That is a very interesting argument. Which one, Augusto? Hi, how did you manage to get your account back? So, I'll just admit straight up, if it wasn't for my audience messaging them, and if it wasn't for like me being a larger content creator to where I have a content manager, I don't think it would have happened. Like, I'm fully aware of that. That like I got some bigger YouTuber privilege there, or medium YouTuber privilege, whatever you want to call it. Because I don't see myself as a big YouTuber. I still see myself as like medium fish. Habbo Hotel was my first online virtual world, basically. Diablo was my first online game. Then I played Habbo Hotel. Then I played Dark Eden, kind of like right around the same time. So those were like my two first games. Like I was really into Dark Eden and Diablo, obviously, and I was hugely into Habbo Hotel. Do you think we're far from a VR MMO that would capitalize on this VR social community that we're seeing in VR chat? So the beauty of it is that you don't even need a VR MMO. And you might be saying, well, what do you mean? Well, yes, if a VR MMO could exist with even just rudimentary gameplay, like in mini games and shit, more than what VR chat basically offers, would there be some success there? Yeah, even with some moderate progression, so on and so forth. They don't have to go pull out all the stops to find success there. They could even go augmented reality in some ways. However, I think what's more important is adding in enough of the features, but doing them in a way that's actually intentional. For example, Galaxies is one of the best examples, I think, of a social MMO, period. Galaxies had voice chat. Galaxies had guild systems. Galaxies had looking for friend, looking for group systems that were insanely detailed. You could type out entire filters for the kind of players you were looking for. They had guild community sections. You could visit planets, learn from players, and learn how to join certain guilds from visiting planets. To get buffs was social most of the time. To trade was almost always social unless you're working with vendors. The game just had a lot of these aspects that are built into it that made it feel more like a world, so players were socializing more. And what I'm trying to say is that this can happen even in a 2D game. I'm actually a big believer of this. That you can still make a 2D game today with a lot of these social levers that I'm talking about, and people would still love and cherish that game. I don't even think you need to go 3D. That's how far back that's how far back socialization is right now in virtual worlds, that we can literally go back and just make a 2D version of it and people will love it. I truly, truly, truly feel that way. And then you might be saying, well, what about a 3D version of that? Well, obviously that would be even better in many ways, right? In terms of just the amount of like
shit that you can fit on a screen in terms of what you could do in terms of the gameplay. I'm not trying to make arguments that 2D, 3D, which one's better necessarily, because I like 2D a lot, but most virtual world enjoyers are going to prefer 3D because it feels a lot more like a world. I still do Second Life because I can build game and RPG systems within it. It also taught me mesh animation and asset pipelines. That's really cool, actually. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with the new Sims game. I know there's like controversy and like rah about people not wanting it to be multiplayer, and I get that because Sims 4 was supposed to be multiplayer, then they fucking like wazooed it at the last second, and then like fucking added a bunch of DLC that people hated. I get that. I just feel like if it is multiplayer, there's just so much it can offer the world as that formula. Like where you have this like AI like simulation Sims with like cooperative neighborhoods. That just sounds awesome to me. And I actually think that there's a lot of potential there. And to be fair, the creator of the series originally, that was his goal. So I get that some players like to keep their own little houses and customize their own little Sims and kind of have their own little private world. You should still be able to do that. Like, I think that they should still let you do that in the game. Make an offline world, a single player world. Make it like Baldur's Gate or Divinity, where you can block it to your friends or make it public or make it private. Just let you choose. Right? Like, what's so fucking difficult about that? And it's like, that's why I didn't understand whenever I was in my Sims video talking about, well, I'm glad to see the new Sims having multiplayer. The pushback I was getting, I did not fucking understand it. People were like, yeah, but like, the multiplayer, they're gonna waste time on that. It's like, but if they just added the infrastructure for making it multiplayer and kept the same core single player game, just added cooperative neighborhoods, how would it literally be that different? It wouldn't. Yeah, but what if it's always online? Come on, guys. You guys know that shit's coming with EA. They already tried doing that with the multiple other Sims games too, with the fucking Dinovo shit. Final Fantasy XIV has great tools for community events. Look, I'm just gonna be honest. Comparatively to any other roleplay-based virtual world, it doesn't. And I know that might sound like people think, "Oh, you're just being a meanie head." I'm telling you, like in Galaxies. This was a mission that my clan leader invented. We literally went to a fucking planet, Loki, landed on this planet, went to this fucking town. In this town, we saw Vader land from a fucking shuttle. He greeted us. We then went and like took this fucking quest, had to go like rescue this fucking person, came back, and guess what? All of this was built into the game. Like, and we also had a space battle after. To fight over a bunker. So I'm just saying, like, when you compare it to games like that, it's like, dude, like, the level of roleplay there, by comparison, was like orders of magnitude more than any modern game is offering you. It's why people love WildStar so much, despite it having kind of a rocky history, is the housing in the game is actually really good. And people really love good housing, especially if it makes you feel like you're connected in some ways. And WildStar had neighborhoods, so... Pro tip, if you want to break into instant crash course in social skills, get a job in customer service phone. I'm gonna completely disagree, and I'll tell you why. I'm a person who, when I've worked in service industries, never was compatible. For example, like people often think I'm joking when I tell them this, but when I used to work as a server, you guys want to know how I dealt with customer experiences? I didn't. I literally would refuse to. Like, meaning if my customer was like being irate or like, you know, being angry about something, I would literally just full stop, go get my manager, tell them the situation and not handle it. And you might be saying, oh, but why? Because here's how I view the situation. If you're gonna fucking cry to me about the fact that your chicken is like fried instead of grilled or some shit like that, like based on my life experiences, where I come from and all this, I don't give a fuck. But it's your job. I'm sorry, I still don't give a fuck. It's because it's just not that big of an issue for me. But it's your job. Still don't give a fuck. Like, which is why I couldn't work in service. And I knew it very early on. One time I had this fucking like dude who was like pissed off. Actually, for the reason I just mentioned, it was like grilled versus fried. And it was because they didn't specify. So if you don't specify, it just comes fried. and they were complaining they wanted it grilled. And I'm like, yeah, you have to request it. Like in my head, I'm like, you have to request it grilled? Like, what the fuck? You think I'm just gonna like telepathically know you want it grilled? And they're like, oh, I look so angry. And what made me laugh is when I came back, the guy was like, yeah, I saw you standing over there. And I was like, you mean waiting on the food to get expedited? That station over there is where you wait for the food to come out. And he just like looks at me, and I'm just like, I don't make the food go faster. I literally told him to his face, I was like, I don't make the food go faster. He like looks at me, and he starts like getting kind of like irate and angry. And I just started literally laughing, like smiling, walked away, went and told my manager. I said, hey manager, do you want to handle this guy before I do? And she looked at me with the same look that I just gave her. And she was just like, yeah, absolutely, Justin. Because that's what my manager would always do. She would handle the issues for me. So needless to say, these are not the same thing. Social skills and working in customer service, what the fuck? Customer service means you have to be able to take abuse and not have any boundaries most of the time. That's not good for social skills, especially if you're a weirdo like me, where I don't like when people like step on my boundaries. So even if it's my job, I never gave a fuck. Like when I worked in construction and I would have like angry clients at me, I would literally tell them, here's my contract, pay me, bitch. That's how I did business. Ask Tom, my editor, whenever I work with any of our advertiser clients, if they're like, they give me issues, that's exactly the same way I am. Here's my contract, pay me, bitch. We're not friends, we're doing business. I don't need to be like, hey buddy, da, da, da. If you break your end of the deal, here's the contract, pay me. Like that's just how it goes, because that's business. That's different than being my buddy and my friend. So I actually disagree with you. But, Rafael, I do see where you're coming from, because my brother got into service really young and now works in sales and had a lot of transferable skills because of that. So in a sense, I'm not saying that's the only reason why he had the skills, but I'm saying like it probably helped him in some kind of way to be able to work with certain clients and stuff like that. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'm back. Battleforge seems like an interesting one. And the game name is Guild Wars 2. That's a good one, Mir. For anime coomers. I also miss classes that only work in a group. Pure healers, buffers. I used to play pure buffer, 100% social class. Augusto, you figured that out without me even having to fucking say anything. I love that, dude. Which is that's an example of how you can make class identity a tribute to a social world. And this is such an interesting concept to me, because I think people really don't fucking have a clue of how balance works outside of games that basically, you know, aren't D&D, I guess. Like, meaning that D&D has, in my opinion, best balancing, best class systems, best identities, so on and so forth. I'm a D&D homer. I believe that the more MMOs and virtual worlds still to this day adhere to concepts of D&D and their class identity, the better. I feel very strongly about that. Holy Trinity, you name it. Now here is a common misconception people have about the Holy Trinity, especially in the confines of D&D. Now I played 3.5, which most people, I didn't even know that at the time, but that was like the fucking more complicated version of the game. The more recent version of the game doesn't have any of these same like hangups, because it's a lot more streamlined in some ways. Well, not hangups, because I don't want to say that like it's a super negative thing, but what I'm trying to say is that like there are classes and archetypes in D&D that exist. Sorry for my cartoonishly big water. that exist that are support classes that aren't about being the hero themselves necessarily. Not in the same way you might think, right? They're not going to be the one dealing the killing blow. For anyone who RPs or plays these kinds of games, you're probably chuckling right now and being like, duh, like we all know that, dummy. I made a class that didn't even have fucking combat stats or some shit. Like, you know, like everyone has a story like that. I know that like the other D&D nerds and fans are aware of these concepts, but I think a lot of MMO fans who might be D&D adjacent fans, I don't actually think that they're familiar with it as much. So I think for them, when they encounter people that love things like some of Dragon's Dogma's classes, they're kind of surprised. They almost think it's like fake and manufactured. Like, you guys don't really like that. Like, that can't be real. And it's like, no. Because D&D is not just about being the barbarian who swings at you. Sometimes it's also about being the barbarian who gives you support. That's what's so cool about the game. Is that there's so many different ways to play it and angles to play it. And so to now bring this into some more hard statistics, this is one of the things I love to tell people. Did you know that statistically, specialist classes that are support-based, that don't actually even have the best combat sets themselves, have almost historically been the most overpowered? I'll give you a perfect example where I literally have statistics to back it up. In EverQuest, there's a class called the Enchanter. Everyone's already being like, oh shit, the Enchanter, that's such a good example. I know, because my friends told me about this when I was playing Project 1999. They were like, hey buddy, did you know that there's a class that exists that basically just buffs people up? I was like, sign me up. That's what I play. That sounds awesome. Because I love Guild Wars 1, and Guild Wars 1 has tons of classes like that aren't real DPSs, but they kind of DPS. And they're not real supports, but they kind of support. And Guild Wars 1 had that in spades. Way better than Guild Wars 2. But yeah, these two games just had great examples of that, and I really enjoyed them. But yeah, sorry, I forgot to say the actual statistics part. The statistics part is relevant because basically, the Enchanter was the least played class. And I'm talking, the last chart I saw said it was the least played by far. It was played by 1% of the fucking audience. But do you guys want to know something fucking funny about the Enchanter? And again, all the fucking my EverQuest legends in chat are probably being like, hey, I know you guys know. But for anyone else who doesn't, do you want to know why this is so significant? Because it was required in nearly every group. How genius is that? That's genius. And yeah, there's other examples like Bard and RO. What's another one? Oh, Mesmer in Guild Wars. Guild Wars 1. I always try to chat with people, but man, I could never find anyone in ESO. Really? What servers were you playing on? Because the game's instance, so it does have instances that get capped at certain amounts of players, but generally speaking, the benefit of such a system is that it allows you to never feel like you're alone. So I'm actually surprised which regions you're in, because anytime I've played ESO, I always have tons of players around me. My problem is they look like fucking stupid. And you might be saying, oh no, what do you mean, nerd? If you guys didn't know this about me, you're gonna learn today. I'm a big fan of Elder Scrolls, but guess what? I actually like Elder Scrolls. Like, I really like the lore, I really love the worlds, and I like Morrowind probably as like my top five favorite game. Why doesn't any of this matter? Besides me just like pontificating or some shit, like, it matters because my favorite thing to do in Morrowind was read books and learn about the lore of the game. I thought the world was fucking fantastic. Anytime I ever play the game cooperatively with my friends, which is not enough, it feels like a fucking MMO, dude. Morrowind's world is so impressive. And I know Daggerfall was that way for some people. And maybe Oblivion was that way for some people too. I loved Oblivion too, but never in the same way that Morrowind. Morrowind was like a true love for me. So you might be saying, okay, what is all of this fucking complaining leading to? The problem in ESO is that the Dunmer and the Altmer aren't just like not friends. They're literally sworn racial god like fucking forsaken enemies. So when people try to be like, you know, I'm in an like, just as lols, I made a character when I was playing in closed beta. He was Dunmer, and it only let you spawn in certain zones. I was like, okay, I mean, it's not that bad. Like, I'm around other players, but at least it's like alliance based. They got rid of that in Tamriel Unlimited. When I made that same Dunmer, I was able to literally spawn in the Altmer city. Bruh. I don't even know a concept to explain this with. It's like literally choosing the most hated race and staying with the people that literally hate you the most. And everyone treated me the same way. Hey, John Blow, the fucking Dunmer, how's it going? It's like, we're literally enemies. Why is the camera angled like this? What do you mean? I mean, I guess like, why is it not higher? Or lower, maybe? To be clear, if most people don't know this, I'm a giant. Like, if you can't tell even just on frame, like, I'm a giant person. The only guy in content creation that's bigger than me is Indigo Gaming. He's like 6'8" or 7, and I'm like 6'5". And with some shoes, maybe a little taller, but like, we're just giants. So we try to fit ourselves into the frame as best as we can, especially because it's a small camera, so. How are the players bad? Which players? You didn't specify, Cheeseworks. You're getting a little emotional there, buddy. The game doesn't really teach you how to play a class. You can spam, yeah, no, for sure. To be clear, when I played my monk, that was pre-nerf. Felt like pretty decent. When I was trying to play it, like, after they changed it, I was like, imagine leveling this shit? It would be even more boring. Some level of independent player and investigation of systems is welcome, but some games totally depend on it instead. Yeah, that's a fair point, Genre. That's a fair point. Yeah, when I say you don't want a power game in a virtual world, I'm basically outlining that all virtual worlds are about power gaming. They're all about like being powerful. Like the only exception in virtual worlds that these don't really even exist at the moment are things like VR chat, where there's no power that's gained, and pre-graphical MUDs, so during the period of MUDs, multi-user dungeons, there was actually multiple styles of MUDs that were narrative based. So theoretically speaking, there was not really a concept of power gaming in these games, and they weren't really about even being a hero. The hero's journey wasn't present in some of these MUDs. The thing is, Deku MUD, one of the most famous MUDs ever, which led to the creation of WoW, RuneScape, EverQuest, you name it, was based on a hero's journey progression-based MUD. So in a weird way, virtual worlds became all about power gaming and all about being powerful and being a hero. But theoretically, they're not necessarily supposed to. Yeah, I went back and played Death Cope about 2 years ago and beat the Sith Warrior again and the Smuggler storyline. And the game was so fucking easy for me that I literally could not even comprehend how I was supposed to buy into my character. Like, there was a scene where you're a Sith warrior and you're fighting against this guy and he's like, you gotta be careful, this guy's so deadly, you know, like blah blah blah. They like sold the whole thing perfectly, BioWare style and everything. I get to the boss, and I remember I was streaming this just for the lulz, and I was just like, hey guys, you want to see the problem that I have with this game? I closed my eyes and I beat the boss with my eyes closed. I'm sorry. That will always remove me from being immersed in a world. And something that I love to talk about, especially these days with the rise of D&D, meaning that it's orders of magnitude more popular than MMOs right now. Just check trend searches for even just like a fraction of that data. But what I love to say is and outline to a lot of MMO and virtual world players, you know, I keep saying virtual worlds because MMORPGs also qualify, is they'll often be surprised at concepts that are hardcore, but are actually very normal for role players. Permadeath. For most role players, myself included, we have been experiencing this since the early 2000s. I know role players have been playing longer than that, but that's when I started. So permadeath is actually very normal for us role players. We don't actually think it's that weird. Also, the concept of fighting against other groups is fairly normal in D&D. They're just groups that are created by a DM. So the DM creates the players, the NPCs, if you will. But he kind of creates them like players in some cases, and even plays them like players in some cases, right? So I think a lot of like virtual world players almost have this like weird misconception about D&D being like a casual game. It's actually not really a casual game. Does it attract casual players? Yes. Are there casual variants and homebrews and so on and so forth? Yes. But it's not really a casual game. Each session lasts an average of like 1 to 2 hours, and you can literally die and lose your character. That's the definition of hardcore. So role players are very hardcore players. I think that was like, it's so funny, I grew up playing hardcore role-playing games first. So seeing this come in this weird circle now where it's almost like players like forgot that role players can be so hardcore, it's almost like fucking comical to me, because it's like, we're more hardcore than PvPers are. I was a hardcore role player first, then a PvPer. There's a thing to be said about gaming difficulty and the retention of players. I bet that if a player struggles and likes the challenge, will stay for longer. They only started to get more players, retaining them once they toned down the difficulty. Heavensward saw some pretty dire lows when their raid content was at its most difficult. They really need to make MMOs for where if you suck at combat, you can have a satisfying experience like gathering, farming, or crafting. Agreed, but here's the problem. RPGs like that need to exist. Think about that. How many RPGs exist that you can just be a crafter? Or a trader? Or a non-combatant? Well, that's what I'm trying to create with DAP. Stay tuned. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, DAP, the project that I've been working on, and will continue to work on until I finish it, is a single-player RPG that you can complete in a number of different ways, like an MMO. So, or like an MMO should be, right? You know, think of like Streets of Rogue, that kind of concept, right? In a different way. Everything is so theory crafted in MMOs now, everyone has some guide to explain everything to them. True discovery is so rare. So I'll push back against that slightly and say that like, I can play the majority of new aged MMOs without ever reading a guide, and because I'm experienced enough at theory crafting, period, I can still power game my way through the games without any outside intel. And to be clear, I literally believe any hardcore player in this chat right now can do the same thing. Like any long-term PvPer, PvEer, role player, MMO player, I bet any one of you can do the same thing. I mean, I'm not going to say we're all like the same degree or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, we have different things we're interested in. But I bet many of you can come up with theory crafts yourself. Maybe some of you haven't even tried. But like, you know, ask Mr. Zero Sins and a couple of the Guild Wars 2 players. I literally came up with a build that ended up becoming meta in modern competitive Guild Wars 2 on my own. I was on stream just fucking around coming up with like a necro build. I was calling it the necro burn build. This ended up being called the Scourge build, and most people ended up taking the same exact talents that I took. So it's just funny because the Condition Mancer, the original CM vanilla, I also fucking invented. So as an idea, if you're just good at theory crafting because you have experience with D&D, with mechanics and stuff like that, you're just always going to be able to do your thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a skill you have. And again, I believe a lot of you guys here in chat have the same skill. Content quality is a lot higher than medium. I appreciate that, Devil Lightning. Honestly, it's not easy being a dev and figuring out difficulty either. It isn't, because you have to basically commit to whatever your vision is. And that's very hard to do for a world, because a world is oftentimes many people's visions kind of like connected together. Now think about Final Fantasy XIV. Its vision is having you go through a journey as a superhero, basically, right? This hero who can basically do whatever they want and need, different classes, be whatever they need to be, and be the ultimate Final Fantasy hero. Like, that's kind of what the game's about the most. Which means that overcoming challenge is, ironically, in a weird sense, it's not really a big focus of that kind of concept. And this is why I push back against Final Fantasy XIV fans who try to say I'm just some angry Final Fantasy fan, when it's like, am I angry if all Final Fantasies are difficult? Nearly every Final Fantasy game besides 15 and 16 are pretty difficult. Go back and play 6, 7, or 4, and you guys are fucking lying if you tell me those games are easy. They are not fucking easy. I went back and played them. They are not fucking easy games. So some Final Fantasy fans like me actually expect it to always be difficult. But here's the thing, Final Fantasy XIV is not made for fans like us. And I have been very clear. I might say that I wish it was better at teaching players. I might say that I wish it had more difficulty, but it's not made for me. So it ultimately doesn't matter. And so you might be saying, well then, kind of, what's your point here? Well, look at some of these other games that are even some of the ones that I've outlined, like Streets of Rogue. Or even look at games like Kenshi, Mountain Blade. These games are insanely difficult on the hardest difficulties. I know because I've played them. Kenshi, not that much, but I'm like 800 hours in Mountain Blade Bannerlord, and I think like with my other account, like probably 300 combined in the other two, in Mountain Blade 1 and 2. So I have over 1,000 hours on the entire Mountain Blade franchise. It's still difficult for me to play. It's still not an easy game. There's a lot of very difficult aspects of the game that become even more difficult to achieve if you're, outnumbered and so on and so forth. So I think that your point about eventually having to say no, I'm going to actually push back slightly, and I like your perspective on it, but I'm going to say that I think you should be saying no right from the get-go. That's what a lot of developers aren't doing. Is, for example, in my game, I will have a class and a way to play the game that you actually can just like have bodyguards and have friends like protect you. And guess what? That's going to be difficult to balance, because I'm basically going to have to balance your companions to basically like replace your combat. That being said, why do I want to do something like that? Because that's a very typical playstyle in an MMO. I know, because I played fucking sandbox games. Sometimes your guild leader is not the best fighter, but they're the best leader. So they tell you what to do. And they watch over the battlefield and say, hey, go here, go do that. They're not the best player. Doesn't matter, they're the best strategist, or they're the best fucking general, right? Maple Story, very social game because of the level of grind, for sure. Which is why I don't like when people shit on grind. Grind allows for more chances to be social, ironically. Sims pulling off Fortnite, where they feature multiple genres on a single title. I mean, maybe, but it's more of the new Sims game said it's going to have, like, multiplayer aspects. So I'm just saying, like, give me a cooperative. Do you think that Star Citizen will be a good social experience? Because they're trying to actually build a simulation, yes. Even if they put so much effort into the NPCs being simulated themselves, what a lot of players don't understand about that as a concept, it's why Star Citizen for virtual world nerds like me, even, I'll just make this argument. Anyone I've ever talked to who I deem to be on my level or higher in terms of virtual worlds, which is a very short list, even they are impressed with what Star Citizen could do. How could they not be? It's because here's why. Sims Online, here's what their idea was. Let's create a Sims game, but no Sims NPCs. What? Why? Because it's Sims Online. But doesn't every Sims game have NPCs in it? Yeah, isn't literally the point of Sims The Sims? Yes? Okay. That game failed epically. And that's a large reason it failed. Because they completely tried to do away with the NPC part. You can't do that. Players still like interacting with NPCs. They do. Why else do they play fucking single player games? There's still a lot of interaction you can get. You can feel sadness. You can feel anger. You could be happy when you talk to an NPC. They can evoke all of those emotions from you. Your companions, right? Even if they don't say that much, how many people love Lydia in Skyrim? A lot. She fucking almost doesn't say shit. You see what I'm saying? So there's so many ways to get people invested into the characters, into the world, and a big part of what Star Citizen is trying to do is push this aspect of. We're not trying to replace NPCs with players. We're going to create a world that is our world that functions in our rule system with our, I forgot what they call it, but there's a name for their system. It kind of creates emergent gameplay. It's like this big AI robot, basically, operating behind the scenes. If that thing can actually end up functioning properly, then guess what? It means that the players don't have that much of a barrier to get involved in the world because NPCs help make that easier. And also, it means that with NPCs involved in that world, it means that now it feels even more real. Because not a lot of players want to do the most menial tasks. Not all the time. But NPCs will. And they're believable enough. They can operate a train, right? So that's why something like Star Citizen for nerds like me, even if it is long budget and taking forever, all that's true. Nobody's going to debate. Nobody rational is going to debate that. But if they could launch the game that I'm describing as I described it, they will change the face of virtual worlds. Just literally. And of course I want something like that to happen. No, Maxis has never had that simple of a time. You're right. They've always kind of been a bit of they kind of got gobbled up by EA early on. All of the companies like that kind of got raw ends of the stick. Yeah, Riku, exactly. And that's why one thing that I push back against when people constantly talk about bringing back WildStar, I'm like, to be clear, WildStar had the problem that I was talking about, which is that the game was so easy to level through that when you got to the end of the raids and stuff, it was actually really fucking difficult. And most people couldn't even complete the content, both PvP and PvE. As I've said before, closed beta tested the PvP and PvE content. And nobody could fucking do it. And whenever the game came out, guess who were the top arena players? The ones that they already knew. That's why they invited us to the beta. Because me and Fantaram were Guild Wars 2 pros, so they were just like, get these guys in WildStar. And naturally, him and I dominated everybody. Which shouldn't be surprising because we're ex-Guild Wars pros. But the point that I'm making is just that game was great for us. What about everybody else? What about everybody else, Palia is not a very social game. So I'm gonna break everyone's I'm gonna pop some cherries here. Just because a world is calling itself social or seems social or it's pretty, it's not really. In fact, what does Palia offer more than Animal Crossing does? It doesn't really. And Animal Crossing did exactly what I just described that Sims should do. Which is why it's always fun when Sims fans poo-poo that idea, when it's like, Animal Crossing just sold 20 million copies from coming up with NPCs that simulate and then allowing players to cooperatively play with them with other players. So maybe let's get out of the fucking past, guys. Come on, man. I'm not your buddy, pal. Oh, dude, anytime I ever had angry, oh, that's not an option in phone customer service. That's the trick. No face to face. I like you, Rafael. You're funny, man. Maybe you're right, dude. With me, maybe you're right. I just have too much trauma growing up that I just don't let people talk to me rudely. Sorry. It's why it always cracks me up when I see those comments that say, I made a tweet about this recently. People say, man, I saw Nerd's true colors because he made fun of some like idiot in the comments. And it's like, to be clear, if that was seeing my true colors, that would be the first time you would have actually seen them. Because you never saw my true colors before. You saw my videos. It's like thinking that you're gonna be best friends with fucking, I don't know, like Billie Eilish because you like one of her songs. Like, you have nothing in common. You don't even know each other. Like, what the fuck? Like, she's just an artist. Like, I'm not saying you can't love her music and really be into her shit. I'm just saying, like, you don't actually have a rapport with that person. Which is like one thing I constantly talk about here is I use the word rapport or connection. Rapport and connection is what we're doing right now, right? I talked to Riku a few times, right? I talked to Minus Ziski, Rafael, Augusto, Rept. Sorry, my Spanish, Rept. Zero Sins, Devil Lightning, Coco Coconuts, Automation, K Crew, Raging Lee, Def Coat, and any of the other names that I missed, because we're connecting. So that's why I love streaming so much and why I keep it kind of so like nonchalant and not really like official, is because I like to connect with my audience. I actually want to connect with them. I want people that are in this room to know that like, this is me. This is who I am. You saw sometimes I'm passionate about some like deep fucking societal like change kind of shit. Next second I'm laughing because the fucking comic talked about someone sucking someone's dick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the internet kid. I might have some like soapbox moments, but like I'm just a human being. I'm me. I'm not super moralistic. I'm not here to, you know, shove narratives down your throat about like the world and shit or whatever else. Like, I just want to talk about video games. I want to talk about how we can help people connect and enjoy them more. And yeah, whatever is surrounding that. There's a lot of interesting aspects that are surrounding that. Hi, I like your hair. Thank you, FSO. I appreciate that. It's kind of a little run down today because it's like kind of hot in here and I have the window closed. That's why my face is a little red too. I need to buy a fan. Since I just got paid, I should buy a fan. Thanks for reminding me. Because in Mexico City and places like this, when you live in the mountains, you don't really need a fan or air conditioning. But yeah, sometimes it can get a little hot and it happens. I love the Prophet and Lineage 2 too. Yeah, that's another great example. While players can't grasp support classes. It's pretty baffling since the concept shouldn't be that far. That's kind of why I was like handling it with kitty gloves, but I'm like, for anyone who plays D&D, it's like, this is so absurdly dumb to even like consider as a concept that like a world would exist where it's like only fighters. It's like, what? In D&D, I specifically sometimes give my guy RP skills on purpose. Like, what? I'm not fucking PvPing. You know what I'm saying? Like, playing Morrowind as an Argonian, every dark elf wanting litter. Yeah, dude, that's, and to go back, you hit the nail on the head, Mr. Zero Sins. That's why I'm crying so much about ESO. ESO, I cry about it because it was built in Hero Engine. How the fuck did the Hero Engine guy trick another person? Yeah, but they changed it to the fucking Gamebryo after. Yeah, but they built it on the fucking Hero Engine, and you can tell. I have been playing Hero Engine games, not even fucking exaggerating, guys. You ready for this? I've been playing them for fucking 14 years. I've been playing these games. I have never played a good Hero Engine game. that was good because of the hero engine. The engine sucked ass. It disappeared off the face of the fucking earth, and whoever the salesman was that managed to sell it to SWTOR and fucking ESO, you're a god, dude. Seriously, you're a god salesman. How the fuck did you sell that piece of shit? We're an MMO engine specifically, and it's like, but we can't function with massive amounts of players. Like, what the fuck? Like, then, what was the point in this being an MMO engine specifically? Did you guys know that Rift actually allowed them to edit live? That's an MMO engine. What the fuck was the hero engine famous for? Lag? Like clunkiness of the controls? That's another issue altogether, but I have to first get that out of the fucking way. Hero engine is dog shit, and ESO's engine is dog shit. And sorry, but it's a big reason why people don't like the game. But another reason why is like Mr. Zero Sense to connect it back together. Just kidding. I was playing a Dark Elf first too. And dude, it was so fucking funny how characters would treat me still like I'm this outsider. So I thought, man, I thought they would be nice to me. Then I made an Argonian. Yeah. It's like playing a Dark Elf in fucking Freehold. In fucking EverQuest. You know what I'm saying? It's like, everyone hates you. Emergency Jurgens. You have great insight into many genres, very cool videos. Thank you so much. If a game has a mode called hardcore, the first thing on the list is usually permadeath. Thank you, John. Hit the nail on the fucking head, dude. It's what drives me mad. Like when I beat fucking Pillars on hard, it's permadeath. Path of the Damned, like there's so many examples of the like different modes that utilize D&D rule sets that call it hardcore when you have permadeath. Those are hardcore games. What's up, Necro Banana? Shout out to Kenshi, I'm addicted. Yeah, that's cool. I feel like modern MMOs break the fourth wall because they lack in-game information. I do think that that's a serious problem of like reducing the amount of power gaming needed outside of the game itself. In a sense. Having normal boundaries can seem crazy sometimes in this era of parasocial exploitation, for sure. And obviously as somebody who, you know, has like an okay size audience, like I get exposed to weirdness of some parasocial stuff, but I think what people are surprised about with me, and anyone in chat can back me up on this, is that I'm not attracted to it at all. Like, because I have CPTSD, I almost have like a hardwired system where I'll try to like keep people away from me that aren't that actual like connecting with me. And you know, in a sense, my audience that just watches the videos and doesn't connect with me, yeah, they're kind of like, there's a barrier between us. There almost has to be, but there just is, because we're not actually connecting in a way. Maybe you really like my content, maybe you connect to my content, but you're not connecting to me. So sometimes what happens from that is that people will talk to me like we've been friends for like a long time, or that I should know them, or like something like that. And it's always like, I feel like an asshole, but I have to be the bearer of bad news, which is that you don't actually know me. You don't really know anything about me. you know that I like mysteries, detective stuff, Detective Conan, virtual worlds, video games that are multiplayer focused, and that I like martial arts. That's basically all I've talked about in my videos. So you don't really know a whole lot more about me. So the troll aspects of me, for example, don't always come through. So when people are surprised by them, to be clear, I'm not surprised by that. What's always surprising to me is how people try to switch it into a parasocial argument. Well, they'll say like, oh, look at Nerd in this environment, he's so rattled because I know him from his videos. You know how I'm feeling because you watch my videos? Like, what the fuck? No, I know how you're feeling because of the way that you type. Do you? Who in chat right now is going to tell you that I type normally? Who in chat right now thinks that I chat normally? Most of you have chat with me either in DMs or on like Discord. I'm an IRC chatter, which means that if you don't know that, I probably sound crazy, angry, or deeply emotional most of the time to you because I'm rapid firing and I type fast. I have like, I don't know, 81 WPM last time I tested. Maybe it was 91. I actually need to test again, but anyway, I'm a pretty fast typer. Like literally it sounds like this. That's me typing, right? I just type my name. That's, you know, relatively decent speed. I have some friends that are faster, but point being is like, when you get that rapid fire version of me, you're getting the ultimate internet edgelord version of me. So on Twitter, on Reddit, YouTube comments, do you honestly think you're gonna get the best version of me in those places? They don't facilitate the best engagement for me. So the answer is no. So if you really wanna make a point to me, if you're trying to make it in my YouTube comments, I'm not gonna take you seriously. Because I know that you can just come talk to me on Discord. Or on Twitter. Or like, you know, in stream or something. Like there's a lot of other ways to contact me that wouldn't be like making a case on a public forum that you can basically espouse to other people about how virtuous you are. Which brings up my next point, actually. I got some blowback about one of the recent sponsors I did. To be clear, I don't like doing dedicated videos, even for videos that I like games that I really like. Because no matter what, it still calls into question how people view my ability to give my perspective versus when somebody gives me something sponsored. So meaning no matter what, any kind of ad always is a question of somebody's integrity. Which is why I didn't do ads for like 3 years. But guess what? Virtuous like actions don't pay the bills. And sometimes when you're, you know, trying to, for example, in my case, educate an audience that doesn't understand an industry yet, and in a sense, teach people about an industry that's very little understood, that's not a lot of money in that. So like, I have to be willing to do things that would make me money to be able to operate in that kind of field. And for other artists listening to me right now, you're like, yeah, bro, like we all do the same thing. I know, this is very normal for you guys. But for people that aren't artists, especially people that don't view it as a career, they especially don't even see how it could make any, you know, sense. For example, I had a guy say, well, dude, why do dedicated videos? You could just do embedded videos. Like, you know, that way people don't hate the video as much. Okay, where to start? Now you can see why I respond very like incendiary to people like this. This is what my brain does. Okay, where to start? Ad space is what you make money off of, not views. The platform pays you for views that it pays from sponsors. So meaning that it's a platform that platforms advertisers that make you, a content creator, money because of the views consuming the advertisements. If there's no ads, period, there's no money. If there's no ads outside of the actual ad revenue built into the platform, for easily 90% of content creators, they can't make a living. There's not enough money in just views. Unless you can break over 1 million views a month, like fairly easily, you're not gonna make anywhere close to how much money you need to make a living. Which means that if you are a niche content creator, you can't rely on just getting a lot of views, unless you have to change your content to be about getting a lot of views, which changes your content even more than just accepting sponsors that you can just immediately right after cover that same sponsor in a Death of a Game video. Or in the case of Gigantic, I already covered them in a Death of a Game video. So I literally am double dipping. When Overprime sponsored me, why would I not take a sponsor from a game I've already covered on the Death of a Game series? Some people see that as like, yeah, but what if the game fails again? To be clear, I'm making a living. I'm not trying to like have a perfect record of, yeah, but do you always know if the games can make a comeback? It's like, I mean, I don't always know that. So if somebody wants to pay me to stake that maybe this one can make a better claim than another one, that's just called like having a job. That's just called working for a client. In any other kind of job, like it's just normal. So in construction, when I would work in construction, how it would work is that we would have to take our tickets or timesheets to the client and get them to approve them to pay us, right? So we always had to be willing to fight for our work. Oh no, this is my timesheet because I worked X hours here, da 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 da. So I got used to doing that. So I actually don't mind at all talking to people about money in my field or work because I used to do it all the time. I used to talk about how much my guys were worth on hours. I used to talk about ticket time. I used to factor in my own overtime, right? I'm comfortable talking about money in a professional context. Now here's the truth. The majority of people who are going to talk to you about money on YouTube and only YouTube don't actually in any serious way care about your opinion nor your stance on any of it, unless it's just literally agreeing with whatever the common sense opinion is, which is that you shouldn't make a living because I don't want to have to deal with you making a living. I'm just going to make it that clear to you. And the reason being is that if I cared about a content creator and I really felt like they were making a bad decision morally, or one that I felt like you cannot make this decision, it's bad for your channel, I would personally contact that person and tell them that. It is my best way to contact them. It's my best way to be heard. And it's probably the most realistic way that I'm even going to be taken seriously, right? I wouldn't post that as a random comment on a public forum that's YouTube, expecting to get much traction, if any. The things that get traction in places like that are basically just agreeing with the norm. So for example, people posting on my Infinite Borders sponsor video saying, oh wow, this is an ad. It's disclosed in the video in the first 2 sentences. It's listed in the video description. It's hard-coded into the video itself. And do you want to know how dumb people are in this world? They actually think that the thing that I'm messing up on is by not putting ad in the title of the video and the description. Nobody is doing that. I repeat, I was talking to my editor about this. Nobody in the industry is doing that because it's not how the industry works. Why else would there be fucking regulations for how to disclose sponsorships if everyone would just list it that way and had to do it that way and that was the norm? They wouldn't exist. It, like literally, it doesn't make any fucking sense. So I, in my head, I'm like trying to process this and I'm like, yeah, literally you have people that are complaining that the industry works this way and they're complaining to me about it. First off, I don't give 2 fucks if you are mad that the industry works that way. Take it up with the industry, dumb fuck. What the fuck am I supposed to do about it? I'm literally a single artist operating in the fucking confines of the space and mediums that I'm operating in. Think about how fucking dumb you have to be to think that I have any fucking say or like ability to sway anything for an entire industry that is not doing it that way. And so it was funny, I saw a couple comments saying, oh, you're using like right-wing terminology and calling people virtue signalers. No, you are literally virtue signaling because I don't own the market. I don't own advertising. I'm not the one that wrote the laws. I don't own YouTube advertising and their systems. I'm not in charge of any of that. I didn't design the systems. I'm literally just fucking working in the system. So if you are a person that is so fucking dumb to think that telling me, a small content creator, that putting ad in the title is somehow like misleading? Are you fucking retarded? Think about that for a second, like clinically. Not saying that, or actually I take that back. Are you not clinically retarded? Because if you have a clinical reason, I will forgive you, like I do. If you don't, then you're just a fucking idiot. And it doesn't make any fucking logical sense. And you should go take all that virtue signaling, but I'm moral because in my line of work, I don't have to work with sponsors. It's like, go fuck yourself. Like I saw some guy even tell me one time, he goes, yeah, well, in my line of work, I don't have to pander to Chinese, mobile games. And it's like, in your line of work that you wouldn't tell me what you did. Why won't you tell me what your line of work is? I can tell you why. The only reason why people never tell me what their line of work is whenever they want to talk about mine. It's because you don't do anything special. I worked for a Fortune 500 company before this with no college degree. Like, to act like I ever struggled in a professional context is fucking hilarious to me. Because I make content on YouTube and I have to have sponsored videos. You're a better human being than me because you work a 9 to 5 that nobody gives a fuck about, that nobody cares about, that you don't offer any value outside of the utility that your workers, that your company basically is exploiting. Yeah, you're not gonna make me feel guilty. You can tell that I've been around the bush a little bit. Yeah, I worked for corporate. I know what it's like. Man, that was just funny to see that kind of response for people. And then to be clear, like people wondering, do you have to like the Infinite Borders video? No, you don't even have to watch it. In fact, if nothing about the video seemed interesting to you within the first minute, or even just in the thumbnail itself, in the title of the video, I don't hold that against you at all. Why would I? Just like I wouldn't want you to hold it against me that I have to make a living, right? So in the same way that I can skip out on when you're doing your script, if you're a server, right? When a server scripts to me, do I ever say, hey, wait a minute, buddy, you're scripting to me. That's part of your job. Why are you doing your job to make more money? Aren't you just trying to make more money off of me? It's like, what? Does anyone in chat actually do that? Do you go to the fucking servers, like industry, like coffee shop, wherever, and do you actually sit there and fucking cry about that? Like, think about, you're scripting to me. Aren't you overcharging me? It's like, no, they're doing their job, which is trying to make more money. It's so funny that when you put it in the context of art, all these people like throw out all the boundaries and just suddenly think that they can just fling around whatever bullshit like arguments they have. Like, no, because you don't know how the industry works. When you say something as dumb as, why don't you put ad on the title? Do video ads put ad in the fucking voiceover? Hey guys, just so you know, this is an ad. Here it comes. 3, 2, 1, advertisement. No, because it wouldn't work that way. Hello, Justin, I'm gonna touch you. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, Necro. Look. I'm touching you too, buddy. Did you mean min-maxing when you said power gaming? No, they can basically be the same thing. I think this is a common misconception, is like, they're divorced. Min-maxing is a form of power gaming, right? There's many forms of power gaming, but min-maxing is a form of it. And it's basically a prerequisite for playing any competitive RPG or virtual world. You basically have to min-max. It's why I push back against people saying that like it's such a negative thing, because I'm like, well, why is it negative that I came up with a class identity that I discovered from utilizing mechanics from classes that I already understood? That's just called being fucking smart. 6 pixels under, yeah. We're 6 pixels under. Late to the topic, but I retried SWTOR recently and just couldn't do it. Once you realize how almost no choice has visible consequences, it really kills the whole conversation system. Especially Darkside. Oh, I see what you're talking about. You're talking about large, overarching themes. I agree with you, Jarcorn. I will push back slightly and say that, like, if you're more interested in personal story and personal companion story, then there's still enough there in SWTOR, in my opinion. But I do agree with you that, like, the Smuggler is another example of that. At the end, I became like a privateer, basically working for the Empire, but never felt like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels like I'm just still like a Republic smuggler. Do I find it easier to write scripts for new videos, or is it coming up with ideas a whole other task from simply typing fast? That's a good question, actually. Good question. So when it comes, that's actually a very good question, and I'll tell you why. Because I have a very interesting way that I do my job. I like to spend a lot of time researching, so much so that I call these like immersion days or the immersion period. Whatever the topic is, I watch gameplay, streamers, reviews, and try to get literally engrossed in it as much as I possibly can until I know everything off the rip. If I read someone's review, oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, this, I recognize this game mechanic, da-da-da. Just like reflex. And maybe that's too much for some people. Fair enough, but I'll tell you why I do that. I do that because when it comes time to write, this is how I write. Brrrr. 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 No, I'm just kidding, but you get the idea. I just fire it off, and it's because after I do the timeline structuring, which is think of it as a scaffolding. Is that too much of a construction term? What about like foundation? The scaffold's kind of nerdy. It's in every construction project just about, but you get what I'm saying. Once I do the scaffolding and the foundational aspects, right? The writing part just becomes literally stream of consciousness. And that's just how I work. It's how I've always worked. I've always been that kind of way. It comes very easily to me. It does. I admit that. When it comes time to actually finish my writing, it's very easy. However, it's the processes before that that are very difficult for me. And maybe that's the opposite for some people. I know some people that love the research parts and feel like that's easy for them. It's not that research is hard for me. It's that the process is just a lot more taxing and takes a lot more energy. When it comes time to write, it's just kind of like, sorry, didn't mean to be aggressive, man. My message got lost in translation. It's all good, dude. That's kind of the point of learning about somebody for the first time, is you don't actually know them. So maybe somebody just speaks very dryly. Like I have a friend like that I would be convinced that most of you would think that he's an asshole when he's actually a fairly polite person. Their job, unemployed. Yeah, unfortunately, that's also sometimes true. You get a lot of unemployed people making arguments about you making money. Yeah, I didn't know you worked in construction too, my Nisiski, but yeah, that happened to me a lot when I worked in construction a lot, especially because I was a young PM, so people were very ageist against me. So it was like I would pull out the fucking systems and engineering judgments and just be like, the EJs, and just be like, okay, let's talk business. Because I know you guys don't know the theory like I do. That's grooming. What's grooming? Death of a Game best series. I appreciate that, Wolfafel. Yeah, but I also think rep, that depends on what you're like playing, which you kind of outlined yourself. To put it into D&D terms, I won't play with min-maxers in D&D. What does that mean? Well, here's what I mean. If you're a full power gaming min-maxer in the context of D&D, I don't want to play with you. I realize that. And it's because I was playing this one time with this random girl. And I didn't think anything, because you don't know who hardcore players are in D&D. You can't judge a book on its cover. This player seemed like she was very casual, but also seemed weirdly put together. She joins our campaign, and she's like fucking smashing, dude. And this is when I'm still pretty new to D&D, so I look up like her exact like role, and I literally found it on a power gaming fucking like board. They were talking about it being so fucking OP because it can fly around and it never gets knocked down and it never gets to do that. And I was just like reading it, I was like, you're playing with beginners. Why are you using a power gamed class? Like, I'm sorry, maybe I don't apply that to MMOs and, the more video game aspects, but like for D&D and RP, all I care about is the story in the RP. So yeah, I am one of those players that's like, I don't really want someone to power game in my fucking D&D campaign. Like, when I found out she was a power gamer, she never roleplayed, like, never really added any roleplay or story to the campaign. She just was like a combatant, basically. And it just felt like she's just one of those players that just gets off and playing the mechanics and just winning and being epic. And I'm just like, that's not my definition of fun at all. But that's what I'm saying, Rept. I'm that way. I make characters that are specifically about like being in an adventuring party. So that's why I cannot understand the idea of like creating a super character who just like fucking shits on everyone, because it's just like it's not. I don't know. Maybe I just can't roleplay that well. I don't know. But yeah, it was just like it wasn't even like she was like a grunt and just be like and would never talk. She seemed perfectly capable of being social. She just didn't want to. She just wanted to just kind of play her class like a fighter, you know? Do you have a consistent tabletop group you're a part of? Ever been a DM? So to answer both of those questions, do I have a consistent D&D group? No. I did. And the other question, have I ever DM'd before? So if you've ever played Neverwinter Nights and you've ever created modules in Neverwinter Nights, everybody's DM'd that's done that, because you have to DM to do those things. So I have DM'd, but I've DM'd a lot on the video game side of things. So in the past like couple of years, I've been a lot more interested in the actual tabletop DMing parts. So I haven't done that yet, ironically. But you know, I think it's gonna be. It's just because I haven't played enough D&D that I'm not DMing, almost because I feel like I'll just get lost in that. Like, I love playing as well, so maybe if I found a group that I could do both in, I would. But right now, I'm a lot more focused on being a player. While with DAP and my concepts of virtual worlds are a lot more about DMing. So I'm DMing all the time, like theoretically, but just not in active campaigns. I love multi-classing in D&D, so my classes are not always min-maxed and stick to a theme. Shame I can't do that in MMOs still, or to still play fun group content. I mean, you can, but it requires you to actually find a guild to play with. So I told people this about Classic WoW. So I'm gonna mute my, I almost said mute my mic. I'm gonna mute my camera for a second. Because there's certain things you can't do on camera. Like jerk off, I'm just kidding. But no, like, so the problem was when I was going into Classic WoW, everybody kept telling me, dude, nobody's gonna ever accept you as a casual player in those games, especially if you don't power game. And I joined a literal group of power gamers, and none of them gave a fuck, because we were friends, and I was friendly with them. And I was like, you know, we made friendships. and there was more that we relied on than just us being like gamers. So whenever I would play with them, they were like, "Oh, like, did you read the brief?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "Oh, okay. Well, here's kind of what you need to worry about, right?" So they would sit there and tell me, "Hey, you need to worry about this. You need to worry about that." And I was okay with that. That's not like power gaming or them like forcing me to do anything. They're just kind of like giving me the idea, hey, this is how you play, this is how you do this, like, and that felt comfortable. That being said, the number one thing that was important there is that I controlled the group that I was a part of. And also the group that I was a part of, you know, they know me and they knew me, which is that when it comes to like more theme park games, I'm more of a PvPer. Sandbox games, I'm more of a role player, and PvEer, ironically, the opposite. But so in those kinds of games, I was a lot more like trying to like PvP and like PK people. Bad balancing means you can't unless you're severely. I mean, it's just not true in most cases, though. Like in specific Guild Wars cases, I could probably see that, but like the vast majority of MMOs, like the content's pretty easy. Like we beat Ragnaros with only like half the people. We beat Onyxia with half the people. A couple other examples like that, and I wasn't even in a super tryhard guild. I think it's just more of an aspect of like, if you're trying to like overcome content for the first time, and all of you are trying to like not like develop strategies around it, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's what someone like me is arguing. What I'm arguing is when I play Final Fantasy XIV sometimes, and some of these people say, "Oh, dude, like why didn't you study this dungeon beforehand? Like one time I played this fucking, it was like the first time I did a trial and someone was like, oh, you don't know what the trial is? Why didn't you look it up beforehand? And I just typed very simply to him in English, in plain English, because I haven't played it before. Like literally that's it. I'm not gonna read fucking something that I've never played before. I'm not that kind of player. I like to experience shit. So I'm gonna go through it the first time as it was intended, which is fucking figuring it out on my own. You know? What if you weren't challenging enough? I mean, I'm not really sure what you're asking, but it sounds like you're asking for better friends. That was an issue that I went through. I mean, I'm not trying to be edgy here, but maybe many of you guys went through that same issue. This actually happened to me the most in Halo, is my origin story with this. So when I was playing Halo growing up, I loved playing with my friends. We used to LAN all the time. I'm talking LAN like for 10, 15 hours straight. Well, throughout this process, I became very good at the game. And when we started playing online, I realized that my friends weren't that good at the game. I still had fun playing with them, but like whenever we would try to be competitive, my friends would just get shit on. So what actually happened in fucking Halo 2, or no, Halo 3, is I started solo queuing Team Slayer, and guess what? I placed higher with randos than I placed higher with my friends. Okay? So that was eye fucking opening for me. Sorry, I haven't turned my camera back on because I haven't taken a hit yet. But yeah, like literally I couldn't divorce myself from understanding that once it came into my like realization. I was just like, fuck. Damn. Like and maybe some other people have epiphanies like that too throughout your MMO journey with certain gameplay things or moments of gameplay. But yeah, that's always been one for me. It's kind of feeling like there's a certain level where if you're trying to make a certain climb of player skill, you just have to be honest that some players just aren't going to get you there. And it's why whenever I do PvP guilds, and anyone that knows me knows this, like my PvP guilds are always invite only. Oh wow, you're so like elitist. Yeah, I am. When it comes to PvP, when it comes to competition, I am insanely elitist. I only want to win. Because that's the point. That's what I'm supposed to be fucking doing. Like I have a tournament this weekend in jiu-jitsu. I have to go fucking strangle people or try to break their arms and shit. Like, I have to because they're gonna try to do it to me. If I don't go out there and just try to smash them, they're gonna fucking smash me. They're gonna tap me, they're gonna try to break my arm. So it's like, just like it's understood in competition, you try to make it as fierce as possible because that's what you're supposed to do in competition. And so, competition against the NPCs is still competition. So if you want to play with players that can play the hard level content, you have to be able to find those kinds of players and know how to attract them. The reason why I can always build elite small groups of PvPers is A, they want to be in my guild, like, sorry, I know what I'm doing. And B, because I always train my players up. I never make it just about myself. I'm always about supporting my team, supporting my guild, teaching my players, training with them, guild versus guild, fucking 1 versus 1 duels. I'm always about improving my team. I think that's, you know, just to toot my own horn, I think that's why people like to be in a PvP guild with me, is because I like to go all out. I'm gonna have an alt character. I'm gonna be grinding on another character while I'm PvPing on this character. I'm gonna be, you know, figuring out what's the best way for us to make money as a guild. Like, I'm really into all of that stuff. And I'm not saying this to be like, wow, I'm so fucking cool. No, I'm saying all of this to tell you guys, like, that's what my standard is. You see what I'm saying? Meaning that my standard is everyone else needs to be doing the same fucking thing. So I discovered this as I grew up, that like the only PvP guilds I join these days are the ones where everyone views it the same way. Where we all have to pull our weight. Where everybody needs to be on point. Where like when I used to be in Grief, for example, if somebody was getting ganked, where's he at? Tell me, where's he at? I'll go kill him right now. Even though I'm leveling, I don't care. Because that's what I find fun. That's what's fun to me. Okay. I'm about to get off stream. So, you guys let me know if you have any questions. Yesterday I did a 2-a-day. So 2 trainings. 1 in the morning, 1 at night. So today's my rest day. Boy, am I gonna rest. Okay. So I want to get to Rep's point here before I go. I like playing to complete a challenge, but don't like strict rotations and having to use a build-up that I didn't make. So that middle area does exist, but it goes back to what I'm saying. You have to be good enough to select for friends for yourself. Because that's the exact group that I play with. Like anyone that ever plays with me, if you ever try to fucking like tell me the meta spec, you're probably getting laughed at. In fact, one of my favorite moments to ever like encapsulate this and my feelings on it. One time I was playing with Baconite. Baconite's one of my good MMO friends, and he has the exact kind of playstyle you're talking about. I was playing with him, and someone in the group, like, I think they were new or something like that, goes, "Hey, like, you know, Baconite, how come you're not playing this? Like, it's like the meta thing." He goes on this long rant. I'm talking 10 minutes telling Baconite about how cool this class is, blah, 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 blah. Baconite lets the guy finish and just goes, "I don't care." It's like one of my favorite moments in an MMO like ever. But like, it was such a great moment because literally, why would you care? If it's not what you want to play or what you're interested in, why the fuck would you care? Like, who cares? I'm not playing that shit. And that's what Baconite was like. He's like, "What? I'm not playing that shit. I play this because I feel like it." And I love that honesty. To be clear, you know, players like me, Baconite, we've been playing these games for a very long time. So sometimes people that are new to these games will hear players like us talk about this and be like, "Well, you guys act like it's just so easy and free." And it's like, well, it is for us because we know what we're doing. We also know what to look for. We know how to attract players. We know how to make groups. So like, we're never alone. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're never like in a outside by ourselves being like, "Fuck, how am I going to find a group to play with me like this?" If I'm playing an MMO or an online RPG, I can find a group that's going to do that. And that's not just because I have pre-existing friends. It's because I know how to select for that, right? Like, if I'm going to find players in the game, I know what to look for. In fact, Minus Ziski brings up a good point. I did a video about meta, and it was funny. I had some like blatant misunderstanders of the entire subject of the video that posted kind of like a similar idea, which is like, I think it's good to understand the meta, is what Ziski says, mostly so you can use it when you want, fight when you need, and modify it into something your style if you want flavor and force. That's basically the argument that I made. The problem is that you get players that are so meta-slaved that they then see, "Yeah, but I don't want to play with players who are playing with non-meta specs." And you know what my response is to them? You don't have to. "But yeah, but what if I'm an LFR or LFG?" Then you're answering your own question. You're playing in a game type that doesn't select for the players that you want it to, and you're complaining that it doesn't select for the players that you want it to. You're the problem. You have to choose the correct players that you want to play with that are okay with playing with someone like you, your spec, or whatever it is, right? Like, you've probably touched on this in the video, but do you think basic MMO gameplay formula is going to change? So I actually have, not in the video, but, well, maybe in my video that talks about the different combat styles. But my opinion is this. I believe that MMO combat is always going to, in some ways, be restricted to the latency and server issues. However, because that's becoming less of a problem, action combat is much easier and becoming a lot more attractive. Now, here's the thing. If a game switches to action combat fully with no tab target as a concept, they have to effectively create tab target combat anyway. And what I'm saying is like, You can't make fully action physics-based games and make it all about aiming when that's only just such a small subset of MMO players, period. Maybe you can attract other players from outside of the industry, like games like, you know, BDO kind of have, and some games like that. But realistically, MMO players and the virtual world players that are like native to the industry don't really find a fuck ton of fun in being super action-packed. And if they do, not all the time. So I think that what you're going to see in the future, in near future, with ArcAge 2 and many of these other games like this that are pushing the envelopes, like ArcAge 1 did, is you're going to see hybrid games. You're going to see games that have both systems, tab target and action combat. Hopefully something like Guild Wars 2 and 3. And the reason why those systems work is that because allowing players to still aim somewhat with a target tab allows a whole subset of players to play the game. Arguably one of the biggest subset of the players. While still allowing the chance to play action-oriented means that if they want to change classes and learn something different, they still can. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you lock it into just being a tap target game or just an action combat game, you're never going to be able to get that middle ground. So I actually think that the best approach is both. Yeah. Well, yeah, like the, you know, to go into me in Guild Wars 2, whenever I load up that game every now and then. One of my favorite ways to murk people on the ladder is because I know every Condi removal in the game by heart, basically. I know who has them. I know how they activate them. I know what they look like. And the majority of players who play solo queue do not take Condi removal. And if they take it, they only take it on their heal. That means that as a condition Mancer, or even the fucking Pharaoh burn build, the only thing you have to do is stop the heal. That's it. If you stop the heal, they can't peel the Condis, and they just get Condied to death. So, I think that, like, Guild Wars 2, I know we always end up fucking talking about Guild Wars 2's combat system. Here we go again. Which is that it's too competitive. So how would I fix it? Camera changes. Make it base camera to allow for PBAOE selectable on tap target stuff. Meaning, make the easiest way to play the game the default way and make it easily accessible. That's the first thing for Guild Wars 2. Second thing, if you guys want to do this fucking action combat reaction kind of fighting game system, you either have to slow down the combat or lower the damage. Because having power spikes be the ultimate penultimate thing in Guild Wars always leaves it for casual players are never going to be competitive. Because there's no prot in the game, guys. They removed the monk. If you insert the monk back into the game, ironically, it can fix the problem. Because you need a prot. You need a character who protects, not just heals. Monks don't just heal. They protect. They can preemptively stop damage. That's what's also missing in the game, in my opinion. Because it doesn't have a way to preempt damage, and Zero Sins and I have talked about this, spiking is so effective because you can spike someone down instantly. And in some games, they don't have prot, but they have pre-healing. So people will dot somebody up and just like heal the shit out of them before they get spiked, right? The problem is in Guild Wars 2, the best way to kill your target is always to spike them. It's always to spike them as fast as you can. That's very fighting game-esque. I don't think that that lends itself that well to an RPG and an MMO. The game is too fast trigger. It's too fast trigger. I've broken this down before. I don't have my clips anymore, unfortunately. I don't think so. Let me check. But I had a bunch of old clips that I would use for like demonstration of like in one single fight in Guild Wars 2, in a PvP fight, like fucking 100 major things could happen. And yeah, I don't think I have it. Probably deleted it. The fuck is this? But yeah, so I think that that's a big problem with Guild Wars 2. If you can fix those issues that I just talked about, I think you greatly increase the chances that more players can get into the game. Now, another thing. If you guys want to have this combat system, teach people how to use it. Make the content early in the game challenging enough, at least the dungeon content, so players have to overcome something at least. Even if leveling is easy, make the dungeons hard. Yeah, but players are going to be in for a rude awakening. They can get better that way. You can still teach them mechanics of the game and spoon feed them in ways in those dungeons that prepare them for the end game. That's going to be important. Making sure that the Guild Wars fanbase is educated before they get to max level. That's going to be important. Because remember, you can PvP before you hit max level in most cases in Guild Wars, right? So they have to be careful about that. So I think bringing back the monk and making it easier to change your camera system, which the game didn't do a good job of that. And yeah, slowing down the spikeability in the game. There's too much spiking. Preemptive stuff is nice because blocking, as you said, both of you guys said, blocking allows you to calibrate. Because boom, you block, it's like, okay, now what? Just like in a real fight. Boom, I block, now what? You know? When you don't have blocking as a mechanic, and yes, people are gonna say, yeah, but blocking exists in Guild Wars 2. Shut the fuck up, you know what I'm talking about. you cocky bastards. Guardians, yes, they have block. More than anybody else. Yes, Warrior Shield can block. Yes, there's a couple invulns you can use as a warrior too. I'm talking about literally putting prots on people and blocking them blocking for them realistically. The preemptive blocking in Guild Wars 2 is not good, dude. The game's too fast. How the fuck are you gonna block shit in time? Not to mention, I don't actually think it's easy for Guardians to spread their block. It's more of a thing that you have on yourself. Now, I know there's some PB AoEs you can place that spam block, but can somebody fact check me on that? How many abilities even... Actually, I can just look up block condition. No, boon. It's a boon, my bad. Okay, so... It is called Aegis in this game. Aegis is a boon which will block the next single attack of any kind. Let's see. So Protector Strike from the Mace gives your teammates block. Shield of Judgment creates a block wave. Field of Mist for the Revenant blocks projectiles. Sorry, my nose is tickling the hell out of me. Lionbreaker Staff grants your teammates a bunch of boons on the warrior. So yeah, like Chaos Storm can give it randomly. So there are some abilities, but sorry, I had to scratch my nose. There's not that many of them. Now there are some utility skills, and basically nobody takes any of these. Maybe in PvE they do. I don't know. One elite skill that grants it. Ah, see, that's one that I remember. The Willbender has it now too. You see what I'm saying? It's just like, it's not as spammable as it was in the first game. And the only way you can actually do it is by doing inputs. Meaning you actually have to like activate your abilities and target your teammates, or do a combo that then buffs your teammates. So it's like a couple extra steps versus a monk can just cast it as an ability. Boom, support. Boom, support. It's just too action focused. Yeah, Aegis, but it actually can last. Yeah, I mean, it's literally what we loved about, here, I'm gonna show you guys some fucking cool shit. At least it's cool as shit to me, yo. And also, we'll have to cover all this other stuff later. I'm gonna get off after I show you guys this. One of the coolest things about the game. This is why protection should be in the game. This is why monks should be in the game.
Hello everyone. In this video I want to go over how to do the superior runes. All you do is you cast Protective Spirit, which will limit the damage you take to 10% of your health. And since your health is 55, that means you'll only be taking 5 damage with each hit. But with Shadow Form, which reduces the amount of damage you take by 5...
I remember when I figured this shit out as a kid. This shit was so genius to me.
Shadow Form included. You're basically taking 0 damage with each hit. So this run's going to be a little bit different than most of the Vaatier farms, mainly because we have to do a 60 pull, which basically means we have to pull all of the Vaatier in this area at once.
Look at this shit, dude. This is
Guild
Wars.
That, you need to aggro one side like I'm doing here. I got all the ones on the south side, but if you
it was
want,
such a turbo fucking
really
nerd lord like game.
And what you need to do is
such
sort
a
of
big
let
brain
them
game.
semi-ball on you, not so you can attack them, but so that they can attack you.
Like I said, the
And
first time a
reason
guy
for that
55'd
is
with me,
because there's some sort
he
of
actually helped me
AI
level.
glitch where
You
if
could pay
start
monks to
run
help
away
level
to
you.
the north
55
side or
monks,
the
they would
south
help
side,
level.
depending on where you started. If they're not all attacking you at the same time, they'll break. But if you let them all attack you on the other side, then they'll follow.
Come on, dude, that shit's fucking awesome. But yeah, so what you just said basically was what that was. You could protection tank, and as long as you kept your enchantments up and you didn't like yourself, you could literally just like kind of be invulnerable. If you're wondering how was it balanced, he's fighting against certain types of mobs, so obviously other types of mobs could hex you, could interrupt you, could hit you harder than 55 and just kill you, or hit you harder than sorry, I shouldn't say 55 because it's still 10% of whatever your HP is based on the thing, which means that they would be inflicting probably wounds if they're gonna kill you. So, yeah, 55 monk is so fucking cool.
You a much farther.
And one thing that's cool about the monk too is that I actually think it gives them the perfect chance to introduce melee combat in the form of hand-to-hand. Because it doesn't really exist in the game. And consecutive hit combos don't really exist in the game either. So I feel like they could just shoot that in. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. It's a bit of a long one for me. But I guess I had a lot to get off my chest. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day and week. Hope you enjoy the next Death of a Game that's going to be on Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and the previous one that was on Rumbleverse. And yeah, I didn't see it. Peace.